Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. We're certainly pleased to have such a great crowd here tonight. This is Tuesday, September 4th, and this is your City Council. We'll start by introducing the City Councilors that represent all of you.
Council members Aguilar.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Entenmann.
Here.
Erpenbach.
Here.
Jamison.
Here.
Karski.
Here.
Rolfing.
Here.
Staggers.
Very good. We start every meeting with an invocation. And tonight, we're very, very pleased to have City Council member Michelle Erpenbach will lead us in prayer. What we'd ask you to do is to please stand and then remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor Erpenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Will you bow your head as I pray? Dear wise and loving Father, first let me say thank you. On behalf of all who are gathered here today, thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thanks as well for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. Thank you for loving us even so, from your boundless and gracious nature. In the scriptures, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for our mayor, for the various levels of city officials, and in particular for my colleagues and me on this assembled council. I'm asking that you would graciously grant all of us wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in our lives, and joy in our task. I pray for the agenda set before us today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Sioux Falls. It is in your most blessed name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, again, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for being here tonight. We certainly appreciate it. Do have a proclamation that I'd like to read, and is there anybody here on behalf of the proclamation tonight? Very good. Welcome. Hey, Janet. Would you mind just introducing yourself to the people of Sioux Falls, please?
Sure. Lori Montes from the Helpline Center.
Janet Kidham-Sally.
Well, welcome, Lori. Welcome, Janet. The proclamation reads, whereas in the United States, one person dies by suicide every 14 minutes. Whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of all deaths in the United States and the third leading cause of death among people between the ages of 15 to 24. Whereas suicide is now the 9th leading cause of all deaths in South Dakota and the 2nd leading cause of death among people under age 45 in South Dakota. Whereas it is estimated that 4.73 million people in the United States are survivors of suicide, those who have lost a loved one to suicide. Whereas there were 139 deaths by suicide in South Dakota in 2010. Whereas 32 residents of Minnehaha County lost their lives to suicide in 2011. Whereas this stigma associated with mental illness and suicidality works against suicide prevention by discouraging persons at risk for suicide from seeking life-saving help and further traumatizes survivors of suicide. Whereas the Helpline Center is the only crisis line in South Dakota accredited by the American Association of Suicidology and is dedicated to reducing the frequency of suicide attempts and deaths and the pain of survivors affected by suicides of loved ones through their suicide prevention, intervention, and aftercare efforts. Whereas it has been acknowledged that suicide is a major health problem and support is needed for educational programs, research projects, and intervention services. Now, therefore, I, Mike Huther, Mayor of the City of Sioux Falls, do hereby proclaim September 9th through September 15th as Suicide Prevention Week in Sioux Falls. Thank you. We'll now move on to tonight's consent agenda. Council, any comments or motions on tonight's agenda?
Move to approve, Karski.
Second, Aguilar.
Councilor Karski has made a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, seconded by Councilor Aguilar. Is there any discussion? Very good. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Intiman,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jamison,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. We'll now move on to tonight's regular agenda. Council, any changes or motions to tonight's regular agenda?
Move to approve, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Karski.
Councilor Erpenbach's made a motion to approve tonight's regular agenda, seconded by Councilor Karski. Any changes or motions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor
I
Erpenbach.
would move to withdraw item 41.
Second, Intiman.
There's been a motion by Councilor Erpenbach to withdraw item number 41, seconded by Councilor Intiman. Any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Intiman,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jamison,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
The motion to amend the agenda has been passed 7-0. Any other motions or changes? Very good. If I can have a roll call on the amended main motion, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Intiman,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jamison,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. We now have a meeting, folks. And what a great turnout. This is just tremendous. And I'll tell you, your council gets energized, and of course I get energized the more and more people we have that get involved in your city government. This is just an outstanding crowd, so thank you. This is an opportunity for you to engage the council, and they'd love to hear from you. Just a couple of ground rules, if you don't mind. Number one, we'd ask you to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. If there is an item that's going to happen later on the agenda, for example, a second reading, the texting and driving ban, for example, we'd ask you to hold your comments until that time. The Sanford Health rezoning topic, we'd ask you to hold those comments till later on in the meeting. However, if there's something else you'd like to talk about, for example, the budget that we're talking about here in the city, that is a first reading. You can come up and speak to the council now. You can certainly do that. Or you can, if there's any other topics you want to cover, please come forward and do that now. Yes. No, thank you, thank you. Actually, folks, if you are going to hear to talk about item number 42, which is the public hearing on the budget, we'd ask you to hold your comments until that time. But if there's any other topics you want to touch on, please come forward. Welcome, Charles. Good to have you here tonight.
My name is Charles Santee. I'm a resident of Sioux Falls. And part of this is simply because I'm somewhat of a lazy person and easily frustrated. But I would like to see something on the website arranged so that proposed ordinances, first, second drafts, or what have you, are listed on their pages with hyperlinks into related parts of the city ordinance, so that you can look up the proposed ordinance, then just click on related paragraphs, subparagraphs, and what have you, and have them pop up. As it is now, you have to go to the agenda, scroll through the agenda to the right section, then click on the right link, which will just give you a PDF of the ordinance that will be under discussion. And along with this, a number of years ago, Mr. Nardini, who was manager of Sioux Falls Transit, was talking about putting up a website that would have the bus routes complete with GPS information on it, so you could see in real time where your bus was. And I would still like to see that happen, and I would especially like to see that happen as an iOS app and an Android app, so that we have a better idea of if we're going to make it to the bus stop at time and don't need to hurry, or if we're going to get there in time to see the back end of the bus go by.
Thank you, Charles. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council tonight? Well, very good. Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 25.
Item number 25 is transfer of a 2012 retail liquor license from Dakota Billiards Incorporated, Biggs Sports Bar and Casino, 3100 West 12th Street, to D&K Enterprises, LLC, Biggs Sports Bar and Billiards, 3100 West 12th Street, with conditional use permit 2012-0702, being approved on August 1st, 2012. Item 26 is a new 2012 retail wine license for WR Golf Management Incorporated, Willow Run Golf Course, 8000 East Highway 42, CUP not required. This is in addition to an existing license which predates the ordinance. Item 27 is a new 2012-13 retail malt beverage license for Sid's Crown Liquor, LLC, Sid's Crown Liquor, 330 South First Avenue, with the conditional use permit 2012-0703, being approved on August 1st, 2012. 28 is a new 2012 retail wine license for Sid's Crown Liquor, LLC, Sid's Crown Liquor, 330 South First Avenue, with a conditional use permit 2012-0703, being approved on August 1st, 2012. 29 is a new 2012-13 retail malt beverage license for Stars, LLC, Stars, 2209 West 57th Street, with the conditional use permit 2012-0706, being approved on August 1st, 2012, pending final inspections per building services. Item 30 is a new 2012 retail wine license for Stars, LLC, Stars, 2209 West 57th Street, with the conditional use permit 2012-0706, being approved on August 1st, 2012, pending final inspections per building services. Item 31 is a new 2012-13 packaged malt beverage for B&D Group Investments, LLC, Nutty's Pub and Casino, 3400 West 49th Street. CUP not required. This is in addition to an existing license which predates the ordinance. Item 32, new 2012 retail wine license for B&D Group Investments, LLC, Nutty's Pub and Casino, 3400 West 49th Street. CUP not required. This is in addition to an existing license which predates the ordinance. Item 33 is a new 2012-13 packaged malt beverage license for Hy-Vee Incorporated, Hy-Vee Gas Number 4, 5201 West 26th Street, with conditional use permit 2012-0401, being approved on May 2nd, 2012, pending final inspections per building services. Item 34 is a special one-day wine license request for Senior Citizen Services Incorporated to be held at Active Generations, 2300 West 46th Street, for the Cocktails and Canvas art class on September 25th, 2012.
Good evening. Jamie Palmer, Licensing Specialist. Item 25 is comprised solely, the D&K Enterprises is comprised solely of Gary Clute. He holds no other retail license. 26 is comprised of Tom Walsh. 27 and 28 go together and are comprised of Paul Damien, Henry Epstein, and Barbara Epstein. 29 and 30 it's the old former Joey's Seafood location, and there's, due to the remodeling, they need to, it'll be pending their final inspections. 31 and 32 go together as well. They want to be able to provide growlers and wine to go. And 33 is a new Hy-Vee gas store, and then just a special one day.
Thank you, Jamie. Council, any comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Bach.
I would move to approve items 25 and 26 and items 29 through 34 as a package.
Second Entenmann.
It's been a motion by Councilor Bach to approve 25, 26, as
29
well as
through
29 through 34. And it was seconded by Councilor Entenmann. Any discussion? Very good. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0.
Then, Mr. Mayor,
Councilor
I
Bach.
would move to approve items 27 and 28.
Second Entenmann.
There's been a motion by Councilor Urbanbach to approve items 27 and 28, seconded by Councilor Entenmann. Councilor Jameson.
I need to recuse myself.
Thank you, Councilor Jameson. Any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 6-0. Item 35.
Item 35 is deferred from the meeting of August 21st, 2012, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by revising Chapter 40 to restrict the use of wireless communication devices and amending the establishment of speed zones.
Good evening. Jim David with the City Council Office.
Welcome, Jim.
Before you tonight is a proposed ordinance that actually serves two purposes. First, it's going to prohibit using an electronic communication device to compose, read, or send an electronic message when the vehicle's in motion or a part of traffic. It does not prohibit cellular phone calls, but instead email, texting, and surfing the internet. There was a question on GPS units, and there would be an amendment later on to address this principle. Violations of this ordinance is considered a primary offense. It also includes cleanup language to the speed zone ordinance that was requested by the City Attorney's Office. For example, there is currently within ordinance a requirement to remove reduced speed zone signs when work is being performed, which is currently not being complied with. There are 39 states that ban texting in the United States. The state of Hawaii actually does not have a full state ban, but the counties actually ban it, so it's no longer allowed within that state. 5 additional states have partial bans. This might include bans on novice drivers texting while they're driving, or bus drivers texting. There are 5 states that have no ban, which includes the state of South Dakota. This proposal was supported by a unanimous decision of the Public Services Committee and brought forward for your consideration. The first reading was held on August 7th, and the second reading was scheduled for August 21st, but was deferred today for your final consideration. I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Jim, thank you very much. Folks, this is a second reading, so what that does is it allows you the opportunity to engage the council before they begin their dialogue. So again, welcome. If you'd come forward, just state your name, and again, if you could leave your comments to 5 minutes or less, we would appreciate it. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. I'm Tracy Sabo, and I talked to a few of you a couple weeks ago, but some of you were absent, so I wanted to reiterate a couple things that I mentioned then. I just want to reiterate, according to the Highway Data Loss Institute, which is an affiliate of the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, actually found that in 3 out of 4 states that enacted these texting bans, accidents actually increased after the bans went into effect. Again, the bans increased accident rates. Now, that sounds a little counterintuitive. I understand on a superficial level it probably makes sense. Texting is a reason for people to be distracted. You ban the texting, distraction reduces. But unfortunately, humans in life are a little bit more complicated than that. Reality is that people will act the way that they want to act, and you can't just pass a law and expect reality to magically change. One of the reasons for this is because people are going to do what they're going to do anyway. The difference is they're going to be texting underneath the windows, so cops can't even see them, and then their eyes are off the road that much more. This is just basic economics. When you ban stuff, you create black markets. I think this is a perfect example of the tyranny of good intentions. I know you guys want to feel good, you want to believe that you're doing something, but in reality, you're not. In fact, you might even be making the situation worse. Your own statistics were even inconclusive. One source said that it helped, one source said it didn't do anything. So I just want you to keep that in mind. I also have a real issue with extorting money from people, because that's what fines are. You take money from people without their consent, because they might get into an accident or they might cause a crime in the future. At the core, that's what this legislation is about. It's the assumption that if somebody's texting, they are going to be more likely to hurt somebody in the future. I believe Philip Dick wrote a short story called Minority Report about what happens when the government tries to punish people for things they haven't done yet, into the extreme. Obviously, this isn't that extreme, but the principle is the same. The other thing is that 50 years ago, there was an effort to ban car radios, and that was because it was thought to be distracting. Thankfully, that ban didn't succeed, and it's really no big deal. Similarly, technology is already fixing this problem. Any smartphone that you buy has an app that allows you to talk into it, and it'll type the text into the phone. You can say send text to whoever, and it'll just verbally do it. So the marketplace is already fixing this issue, and all this law is going to do is play catch up, and quite possibly do more harm than good and diminish liberty in the process.
Tracy, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Bill Quinlivan. I'm a resident of Sioux Falls, and I don't necessarily have an issue with the law, what you guys are trying to do at all, but I was reading the article on KSFY today, and I read part of the verbiage in there that worried me a little bit, and I'm going to read it here. It says, the officer does not need to see a driver's cell phone to prove the texting while driving offense happened. The officer can simply write the ticket based on what he or she saw, and it is up to the offender to provide phone documents proving whether or not the offense happened at the alleged time. I don't know if the article is accurate or not. You folks would have to tell me that. If it is indeed accurate, this is going to be a Minnesota Avenue camera all over again, because you're going to get challenged in court. A person has a right to a fair trial, and the Constitution puts the burden of proof on the prosecution, not on the defendant. The other issue is by telling the defendant, in my opinion, that you have to give me a document from the phone company saying that you weren't texting at this time. You are therefore forcing that person to testify against themselves. In a court of law, you cannot do that. My concern is, if we're going to do it, you need to do it right, because we don't want to implement it, go through the expense of implementing it, only to be challenged in court, to have the legal fees, and eventually get overturned. That's my only concern.
Thank you, Bill. Folks, anybody else? Welcome.
Hi, Al Weiderman, excuse me, from Sioux Falls. The only part of the ordinance that you're trying to pass, the gentleman just spoke about, so I don't want to regurgitate all that. But that part, you are looking at lawsuits. If that comes about, I'll be involved in it, because you're stepping on people's toes. If you change that, if the officer sees somebody texting, give them a ticket. You know, take their license away or whatever you want to do. But the officer has to observe the offense. We don't have to prove to the police department whether we were or weren't doing something. The police are supposed to prove that we were in the wrong, period. The first gentleman, I just totally disagree with him. He's way out in left field. Anyway, the only part that he did have that was right is that there is a program that can be gotten from all your cell companies that will block any outgoing or incoming texting and tells that the person will get a hold of them at a later time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weinerman. Ms. Santee, welcome. Come forward, please. And folks, if there's anybody else who wants to speak on this topic, if you wouldn't mind just coming over, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. Ms. Santee, please go right ahead.
In talking with Mr. Anderson, some of my previous, or some of the comments I was going to make evidently will be covered by amendments. But question I have is, what is the operation of a vehicle? I mean, when can a person text? Is it, can he pull over in front of a fire plug and send his text or use his device? And is that legal, or does he have to shut off the car or motor vehicle to do it, or does he have to actually exit the vehicle? And there was, in the discussion, it was mentioned that this may be amended to limit the devices simply to handheld, but I would like some verbiage or something that would eliminate handheld two-way radios, be they amateur or commercial. And in your list of distractions here, you called out VoIP, but there are other services, voice communication services, that do not use VoIP, but have the same effect. Plus, not listed in the list of devices with tablets. And a tablet per se is not a cell phone, and to use it to communicate externally with it, you would have to get a Wi-Fi hotspot, which is not, which is an addition, which makes the whole thing a different package, which probably wouldn't be covered. And since this is about vehicle distractions, or driver's distractions, I remember reading a Argus Leader tweet where a sheriff rear-ended another car because he was checking out his associate at while he was operating or doing something at a gas station and was distracted. And there was also a news article about a young lady that was killed down in the Yankton area because she stuck her head through the back door or back window of the pickup and distracted the driver. So you should also have communications with the driver as a distraction and should be put into this ordinance. And I think I'll end this with a quote that is either attributed to Albert Einstein or Tennessee Ernie Ford. This says, if you're kissing a lady and you're driving safely, you're not putting enough effort into the kiss.
Thank you, Charles. Appreciate that. I'm sure all of South Dakota does. Good job. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Susan Simcoe, and I'm actually here on behalf of another issue tonight. I didn't realize this was on the agenda, but I feel so strongly about it that I wanted to get up and share some thoughts on the other side of the issue that, again, I have a 15-year-old who drives, and it scares me to death that she's, even though she says she doesn't use it, I do trust her, but I know at any given time she's got an iPhone in her car, as do hundreds, if not thousands, of teenagers who we have driving around our city because we don't ban this type of behavior, but we simultaneously allow kids to drive at the age of 14. And I think to allow those things at the same time is, quite frankly, irresponsible. And regardless of what the rest of the state does, I think Sioux Falls has a different, very different demographic, obviously, and I think we need to ban any kind of texting that's going on. And in addition to texting, a lot of these kids have smartphones, so they have things like Facebook and Twitter. They have Instagram, all kinds of apps that they are constantly distracted by, and their phones are constantly beeping, and it's a temptation. I know, I'm addicted to my iPhone too, and I think that we need to have a ban on this. I think to not do so is irresponsible, and I've heard the argument that we already banned distracted driving, and so, or excuse me, reckless driving. So I've heard the argument that if we ban reckless driving, this should be covered under that, but that's like saying we shouldn't prohibit driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs. So I urge you to pass this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Folks, one thing just on the spirit of respect for all the speakers, what we ask is that you just hold your applause and your cheers and your other commentary, if you don't mind. But again, we're certainly pleased to have all of you here, so I don't want to dissuade you from speaking. Welcome.
I'm Rich Lauer, citizen of Sioux Falls. Mayor Huther, Council Chair Urbanbach, and members of the Council, thank you for the opportunity to come here this evening. I'm the spokesperson for Citizens Supporting Cell Phone Safety While Driving. This is a group of corporations and institutions based in Sioux Falls. We share a common concern for the safety of our employees and their families, our customers, the students attending our institutions, and our neighbors as they travel on our city streets. We strongly support the ordinance banning texting while driving in Sioux Falls. You have a full agenda this evening, so in lieu of each of our group coming forward to introduce themselves, I've been asked to take just a few moments to introduce them. They'll stand wherever they are in the room, and I'll mention the organizations they represent. I think they're all here, but perhaps not. Mark Benedetto, President of the University of Sioux Falls. Marilyn Buskell, spokesman for AAA of South Dakota. Drew Duncan, attorney in Sioux Falls, representing Verizon Wireless, Allstate Insurance, and the South Dakota Insurance Alliance. The South Dakota Insurance Alliance represents predominantly all of the property and casualty carriers doing business in South Dakota. Representing the State Medical Association is Mark East, Vice President. Diane Hall, representing the South Dakota Safety Council. Jennifer Klein, Executive Director of the South Dakota Voices for Children. Dr. Tom Lorang, Superintendent of the Sioux Falls Catholic School System. Rob Oliver, President of Augustana College. Dr. Susan Randall, Vice Chair of the South Dakota Legislature's Teen Driving Study Task Force. Myron Rao, currently President of the South Dakota Auto Dealers Association and the South Dakota Truckers Association. Myron's a 26-year veteran of the South Dakota Highway Patrol, retiring at the rank of captain. Dave Rennerly, Executive Director of the South Dakota Safety Village. Tom Simmons, Senior Vice President of Public Policy, Mid-Continent Communications. Jesse Smith, Director of Legislative Affairs for Sanford Health. Dr. Robert Vandermark Jr., President of the 7th District Medical Society. And Julie Ward, Director of Administration of Vera McKinnon Hospital and University Health Center. I've had the privilege of speaking with each of you regarding a ban on texting while driving. The encouragement to bring this to the Council's Public Services Committee, the work of Councilman Anderson and his committee, and Mr. David in drafting the proposed ordinance, and the very strong support of the Council in bringing this to a second reading. It's all very much appreciated by your fellow citizens. This project began last March, coincidentally the 99th anniversary of the South Dakota Legislature acting responsibly to regulate the threat to public safety inherent in driving while intoxicated. Today, added to the hazard of drinking and driving, is the greater threat of texting and driving. At the core of every law or ordinance is society's objective to make a clear statement regarding acceptable behavior. This ordinance is timely, and you are to be commended for bringing it forward, and we thank you. If there are any questions, I'm sure anyone in our group or myself would be happy to respond.
Ms. Flower, thank you very much, and thanks for recognizing the other folks here tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Folks, anybody else? Welcome, sir.
Evening, Mayor.
Good to have you here.
George Hamilton. I am in full support of banning texting. And simply put, a lot that is lost in this discussion is the simple fact that you're supposed to be driving. Now, I'm 50 years old. There are some that are older than me. There are some that are younger than me. But I just had my youngest son get his license, And during the process, he wasn't able to text while driving for his test. He wasn't able to take his hands off the steering wheel while testing for his license. So the whole issue about texting, searching Facebook, whatever, when the material issue is just driving your vehicle. And there are requirements that are in the South Dakota Highway Department of Public Safety that state where your hands must be at all times, what you must do. So I don't see how we get away from just simply operating a vehicle with your hand at 10 and 2 into texting, holding the steering wheel with your knees or holding the steering wheel with your elbow and having a discussion when we're talking about driving a vehicle. So if you're operating a vehicle in a safe manner, then you're following the regulations that were put forth that you passed to get your license in the state of South Dakota. So if South Dakota allows you to take your test for your driver's license while texting or without your seatbelt on or whatever, then we need to change those laws, and then we don't have to worry about texting while we're driving.
Thank you, George. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council on this topic? Mr. Stenga, welcome.
Wasn't going to talk on this issue, but I already know the texting ban. You guys are going to vote for it. But the thing is, where I'm at, when are we going to go a little bit further? You know, I can drive down the interstate and you can see somebody with their leg up on the dash, got the phone up, and they think they're at home. And it's the older people. It ain't the younger ones I really look at. It's the older people. But when are we going to get enough to say we're going to get rid of everything? We're going to get rid of the cell phones. We're going to get rid of everything, and people are going to have to drive like they should be driving. There are headsets that you can buy, and the truck drivers, it's mandatory for them, and there's a considerable fine if they're caught not using that headset. So what I'm saying is this right here is just a baby step. Why don't we really grab them and let's go the whole way? Let's don't just play the game. Let's go the whole way. Let's get rid of all cell phones and be able to do it that way.
Thank you, Tim. Well, folks, thank you very much for that. We do appreciate it. Council, any questions, comments, or motions on this? Yes, Councilor Jameson.
If we could get the maybe a couple questions answered, like the enforcement issue, if the police chief or
Chief Barthel or Jim
or the city attorney, whoever.
Good evening, Doug Barthel, Police Chief.
Chief, the question is, if I'm sitting here and I'm doing this, clearly distracted, you're watching, you drive by and you see me, what am I doing? Clearly distracted first, but am I texting or am I looking up a phone number?
Good question.
And would you still give me a ticket?
That would depend. Certainly, if that continued, well, first off, if you had some erratic driving to go along with it, there's enough right there to write you a ticket under the current ordinance of careless driving. The way this is written, if I as an officer observed you doing that, certainly reason to pull you over. Then it would require some more interviewing, ask you some questions, and depending on your responses or information that I gained from that would indicate whether or not you were issued a ticket.
So clearly discretion is up to the officer. This ordinance isn't going to, give you a green light to just pull me over because I'm down here doing something. I might not be doing anything. I might be fiddling with my...
Well, I guess I misunderstood you. So I wouldn't even see the phone?
Right.
No.
You don't
no,
see
and if your driving's okay, no, that wouldn't be enough to pull you over.
If I'm up here and you see me driving,
yes,
that's the green light
then
to
I
pull
could,
me over.
yes.
And to the point of the question, I'm not sure who asked it, but now I'm down here driving, you don't see the phone, you pull me over and you give me a ticket for distracted driving. That's okay? Or does it have to be texting?
I'm not sure if I told, but first off, in order to pull you over for this ordinance, I would have to see you with some sort of a handheld device. If I don't see that, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. Now, again, if there's some erratic driving to go along with that, certainly I could pull you over for that, whether I can see what you're doing or not.
I guess it gets back to the point of how do you prove that I was actually texting? You're still going to give me a ticket because you can't tell that I'm on my phone, but you're pulling me over anyway. Because I'm distracted, obviously. You can tell I'm really probably on my phone. We've all seen that, where you drive by somebody and they're going like this. What I'm getting at is, does the person who gets the ticket have to prove that he was not texting? That was the question that was asked earlier.
No, it's still, the burden is going to be on law enforcement to prove, because we certainly can't compel you to testify against yourself. The Constitution does not allow that. So we're going to have to prove, whether that be through visual evidence that we are able to obtain or through statements that you might make. It's very possible that you could take it another step further and actually seize the phone, obtain cell phone records. Do I envision officers doing that in a situation as you just mentioned? Highly unlikely. If there was maybe an accident, serious injuries, things like that, certainly we would do that. Matter of fact, we do that now. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Aguilar.
This is either for the chief or for the city attorney's office. The question is, what is the definition of operation of the vehicle?
I think you're referring to the remark that one of the previous people made. The vehicle needs to be, the way it's written, it needs to be a part of traffic, so it either needs to be in motion or a part of traffic. The comment of whether or not you can pull over to the side, if you're legally parked, you would not be in violation of this ordinance the way it's written. So you either need to be, you're basically in traffic, in the lane, so that means stopped at a stoplight, stopped at a stop sign, driving real slow, anything of that nature, you'd certainly be in violation of this.
Thank you.
Keith, did you have any comments on either one of these questions from Councilor Jamieson or from Councilor Aguilar before we proceed?
Keith Allenstein, City Attorney's Office. Just two things. Yeah, the ordinance requires both that you either are driving or in the actual physical control, but also that you're a part of traffic or your vehicle's in motion. So if sitting off to the side of the road would not apply. And secondly, I don't know where the language that the earlier gentleman was reading from as far as having to prove yourself innocent and the officer not having to see anything. That is not part of the ordinance. I think Mr. David pulled up the ordinance there. You'll not find that language anywhere in the ordinance.
Thank you, Keith. Councilor Karski.
Directed to you again, Chief, if you don't mind. The times I've seen the careless driving citation typically is after an accident. Reckless driving typically would be somebody on the borderline of a DUI gets plea bargained down to a reckless. Are there other times when somebody is cited for careless or reckless driving by a police officer, just pulled over for the way they drive? Do we see that citation frequently in Sioux Falls?
Not real frequent, probably more frequent with careless than you will with reckless. Reckless, you need to actually endanger someone's life, so the driving has got to be really on the extreme end before it rises to that level. But for careless driving, certainly could be. Say if we witness maybe somebody reading a book while they're driving, or while they're swerving in and out of traffic, or putting on makeup, or whatever, that certainly would fall under that. But
so to follow up to that question, an officer, traffic officer, sees somebody and suspects them of maybe texting while driving, and they are driving erratically. Do you think they would cite them for careless driving, or would they cite them for distracted driving, cell phone use?
Well, that again is going to be up to the officer. Right now we have officers that have written tickets for that very thing, texting while driving, but there's been some other driving to go along with it, erratic.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Jensen.
There was one other question about the tablet. Is that defined in the ordinance as
the way this is written, certainly that would fall under that, so it definitely includes that.
I just wanted to answer the question.
Thank you. Councilor Bach.
A couple of things. Thank you, Chief. I was just going to make a couple of comments. If you read the definitions, it's now pretty clear. It's wireless or cellular phones, PDAs, Blackberries, smartphones, MP3 players, blah, blah, blah. It defines all sorts of electronic communication devices. But then the actual texting ban itself says no person may operate or be in actual physical control of a motor vehicle while using an electronic communication device to compose, read, or send an electronic message when the vehicle is in motion or a part of traffic. I had a question today from someone asking me, what about citizen band radios? No, it says nothing about talking on the radio. It says nothing about making a cell phone call. It really is literally about texting. And the reason that we have the definitions for electronic communication devices is because some of those devices can send those little text messages back and forth. And I think we have to recognize that 6 months from now, something else on that list might be able to do that as well. And so it's really just setting out those definitions. We're spending a lot of time picking through those very fine details that are just really setting out. Technology changes all the time, and we have to kind of cover ourselves for that. The other thing that I would say, and Mr. Lauer alluded to it, I didn't realize we were at the 99th anniversary of South Dakota banning drinking and driving, but it did used to be legal to drink and drive. Could just, kick them back and drive the car, no problem. It is really difficult. I've ridden along with some of Chief Barthel's officers. It's really difficult to tell when somebody's been drinking and driving. And it's really hard to enforce it. People can hide that behavior, and we know that the anti-drinking and driving law does take some drunk drivers off the road, but there are still people that do it. And there are still people that get in accidents and kill other people that do it. But yet we still say it's okay to ban drinking and driving. It is also okay to ban texting and driving. And I really would ask my colleagues to support this measure.
Yes, Councilor Aguilar.
As our council members are aware, our major responsibility is to set policy for our community. Of primary importance are those policies that deal with the health and safety of our citizens. The ordinance revisions that we're looking at tonight, that we're voting on tonight, fall under this category. There has been a lot of research done on this particular ordinance. Counselors themselves have done research. We've had our staff doing research. The community members that Mr. Lauer listed did a lot of research prior to coming to the council. Some of the important facts that we learned from this research are that sending or receiving a text takes driver's eyes from the road for an average of 4.6 seconds. If you're driving a car at 55 miles an hour, you are driving the length of an entire football field with your eyes off the road. Another is drivers who use handheld devices are 4 times more likely to go into crashes serious enough to injure themselves. And text messaging creates a crash risk 23 times worse than driving while not distracted. What I like about this ordinance is that it isn't just for teenagers or young people, but all citizens of our city. I have to say that some of the arguments that have been brought forward don't ring true for me. One comment that I've heard over and over is that it is not enforceable. However, in California, where they've had the law in place for a number of years, they found that texting convictions increased 47% in 2010 to 2011. You have seen, and we have seen, strong community support, and I too hope that my fellow councilors will support this ordinance revision.
Councilor Aguilar, with that in mind, would you mind making a motion on this ordinance?
Yes, I move that we approve this ordinance.
There has been a motion to approve this ordinance. Is there a second?
Second, Erpenbach.
There's a second by Councilor Erpenbach. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Aguilar.
Yes, I would like to amend the ordinance beginning with 40-1 definitions. I would like that we delete GPS systems, navigation systems, and then add the following: an electronic message does not include the use of global positioning or navigation system. And then amend 40-236 and add after the word, no person may operate or be in actual physical control of a motor vehicle while using and add the words handheld electronic communication device.
Second, Erpenbach.
There has been a motion to amend this item by Councilor Aguilar. It was seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. Is there any discussion on this? Yes, Councilor Jameson.
Just to clarify, what if I take on this handheld device part, if I take my phone and I set it in a little holder on the dash, does that matter?
Are you texting while you do that, Councilor Jameson? What are you doing? Put it in the holder. I don't care what you do with it, hon. Just
Keith,
don't be texting with it.
I won't be.
Mr. Allison, Keith, would you mind coming forward, please? Rather than the council, the mayor trying to figure this out, let's go to our legal team. Did you hear Councilor Jameson's question?
Yeah, I guess if you were reading, if you set a handheld device and set it up there and are reading a text message while it's up on your dash, that would still be problematic.
Yes, I agree. But if I'm up there using this handheld device for other things, you know, it could be anything, but it's still my handheld device.
Correct.
You know, a GPS built into the dash of the car, certainly that's not handheld, but does attaching this to the dash of the car constitute a no longer handheld device?
It would still be using. We're taking out of the electronic message the fact of any GPS or navigation system. So whether it's handheld or not, it would not be an electronic message.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Keith. Well, very good. Good dialogue. There has been a motion to amend. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That has passed 7-0. Any further dialogue on this? Very good. We do have an amended motion. If there is no further dialogue, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That has passed unanimously 7-0. Item 36.
Item 36 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing supplemental appropriations to perform marketing services for the new Events Center and the Sioux Falls Arena and Convention Center.
Good evening, Darren Smith, Director of Community Development. The item you have in front of you is a second reading for a supplemental appropriation that will fund the first 3 months in 2012 of the Legends Sales and Marketing Agreement that you approved earlier this evening as part of the consent agenda. So again, this funding is to allow us to start the contract in 2012, and it would fund October, November, December, and then the 2013 funding is included in the 2013 budget that you have in front of you for your consideration as well. If you have specific questions on the financing component of this, Tracy Turback, Finance Director, is here tonight. I'm sure would be happy to answer any questions you have. And again, although you approve the agreement as part of the consent agenda, if you have questions on the agreement, I'd be happy to attempt to answer those. And John Alper, Vice President with Legend Sales and Marketing, is here tonight again as well. And you'll remember John was here a couple weeks ago.
Darren, thank you. This is a second reading. Again, the public has an opportunity to engage the council on this topic. Would anybody be interested? Very good. Council, questions, comments, motions?
Move for approval, Anderson. Second, Entman.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve item 36, seconded by Councilor Entman. Any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That has passed 7-0. Item 37.
Item 37 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 18th Street and 22nd Street between Menlo Avenue and Prairie Avenue from the RS2 and RD residential districts to the Sanford USD Medical Center Plan Development District, petition number 2012-0617, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
Mr.
Ms.
Mayor.
Cooper. Yes.
Excuse me, I need to recluse myself.
Thank you, Councilor. Ms. Cooper.
Good evening. I'm Mike Cooper, representing Planning and Building Services. This item tonight is a petition submitted by Sanford USD Medical Center. And this is a proposal to change the zoning of approximately 8 acres of property east of the existing Sanford Health Medical Campus. As the agenda states, the property is generally located between 18th and 22nd Streets and going east of Menlo Avenue towards Prairie. The expansion area is being proposed to be included as part of the planned development zoning and would be done for future expansion to include both medical building facilities as well as parking land uses. This is actually the third time that we've considered an expansion of the Sanford campus within the last 5-year time period. Back in 2008, the City Council approved an expansion going north of 17th Street. Most of that area has been developed for parking, but that's also an expansion area that has seen new building construction. In 2009, there was an expansion of the zoning of the planned development district to the south between 22nd and 26th Streets and between Grange and Colville. That was primarily involved with property that was acquired by Sanford that was part of the old North American Baptist Seminary campus. And over the years, we've seen a number of changes to this campus, not only here, but also the other hospital campus in Sioux Falls. And as we've worked with these large institutional property owners, what we've tried to do is figure out a way that we can incorporate their expansion into these existing neighborhoods. Both of the hospitals have gone through significant changes dating back to the 1970s and 1980s. If you look at some of the old aerial photos of Sioux Falls, and you see them surrounded by residential property that has now been changed to medical buildings, parking lots, parking garages. And the position that we've taken over the years is that we don't see either of these major institutional uses moving out of these older neighborhoods into the edges of the city or to a brand new development area. So with this planned development zoning, it provides an opportunity to work with the neighborhood, to work with the hospitals, and as specific development projects are proposed, whether it's a building or parking, that we can go through additional public hearings and we can look at specific details of what those projects are going to include. And over the years, we've talked about setbacks of buildings, landscaping, lighting, signage. All of those details we talk about as we go through those additional public hearings. In most cases, they are done at the Planning Commission level, but in some cases, they can come to the City Council as well. In this particular case, as I stated earlier, it consists of about 8 acres of land. Sanford Health is the current owner of the majority of the properties. When this originally came to the Planning Commission hearing, there were 13 properties that were not owned by Sanford. One of those 13 asked that they be excluded from the rezoning. And so when we presented this to the City Council at first reading, we indicated that it included, in addition to the Sanford land, it included 12 properties not currently owned by Sanford. Today we received a request from a property owner to exclude their land from the rezoning. And the property is shown on the exhibit as numbers 11 and 12, which is just north of 22nd Street along Waltz Avenue. The property owner is Irvin and Greg Fetters, and the two parcels are 1315 and 1317 South Waltz. So again, those are shown as items or as numbers 11 and 12 on the exhibit. So we would like to request an amendment to exclude those two parcels from the rezoning, subject to your other action tonight. The last thing that I'll mention is that at the Planning Commission, we did receive some good discussion by surrounding property owners that had concerns, as we've had those concerns expressed over the years. Again, with the growth of these major institutional uses, whether it's a hospital, or a college campus. The impact on traffic, on property values, on land uses, and all of the property that is being considered for this rezoning, as I said, is either owned by Sanford or is owned by people that are voluntarily agreeing to be part of the planned development zoning district. The parcels that are included that are not owned by Sanford, this zoning will not affect their current or future uses as residential development or residential properties. So they can certainly continue for as long as they desire as residential uses. We also heard that there was concerns about future open space. This rezoning does not include Menlo Park, which is shown in the middle as city property. But we do we have indicated that we would like to have future discussions with Parks and Recreation, with the neighborhoods, with Sanford Health, on what is going to be the future of Menlo Park, because eventually it could be surrounded by medical uses. Is there an opportunity to locate it somewhere else that it could provide more of a neighborhood service? As we've been working with the Pettigrew Heights neighborhood, which is just to the northeast of this area, we've said that there's a need for more open space in that neighborhood. And so this could provide an opportunity down the road that we could identify some additional land that we could look at for open space. So those are long-range discussions that we'll continue to have with the neighborhoods surrounding Sanford and going into the Pettigrew Heights area. But as I'll wrap this up in terms of the staff report and the staff recommendation, again, I think that we have a good track record over the years, that we've worked hard with the hospitals, with the colleges, to allow them to expand into these residential neighborhoods and work with those surrounding property owners to make their growth compatible with the existing and remaining residential development that we see. So I'll stop there and again just reiterate that the Planning Commission has recommended approval of this zoning change, and I'm not sure who all is being represented tonight that would like to speak, but I'll step aside unless you have any questions later on.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Again, second reading, folks, so you do have the opportunity to engage the council. Please come forward. Thank you. Sir, welcome. If you just state your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Orland Cheddar. I'm Vice President of Facilities and Planning at Sanford Health. Thank you for hearing this evening.
You're welcome.
This request began several months ago, and basically our first stop was with planning and talking to them about this parcel of property where we intended to demonstrate that our movement, our growth of the medical center would be to the east based on conversations we've had with the city. And by demonstrating a linear approach to a rezoning request, we have not carved out those properties that we do not own, but rather done a more linear rectangular approach to taking a larger parcel and adding it or requesting to have it added to our planned development district. The reason that this occurs is because we continue to grow. The demand for healthcare services continues to increase. The recent opening of our Sanford Heart Hospital obviously increased the number of people coming to our campus for care, and more physician recruitment is resulting in specialty services that are available, additionally causing us to need space and additional growth. We recognize that these types of issues are important to our neighbors and important to our community. And as a result, is required in the process of filing the application and going through this process, we also held a neighborhood meeting. In that meeting, we had 56 people who actually registered attendance. We believe the crowd was larger than that. We had some very spirited discussion. We did our best to answer questions to the best of our ability. There were a number of people that since that time and even prior to that time have called me directly with questions, comments, etc. And in some cases, frankly, we just probably disagree on what the business plan should look like and how we should proceed. But again, we've done the best that we could to try to answer questions and help people understand what our growth potential is. Some of the things that came up, and I'll be very brief, but some of the things that we did discuss with people who have contacted me include, as you just heard, do I have to be included in this rezone request? And obviously, people who own property within the rezone request do not have to be. I was just alerted by Mr. Cooper's comments that 2 additional people have elected not to be included. And of course, we do not object to that. Anyone who is asked to be opted out certainly has that right. Others have asked if I'm within this boundary or near the boundary, will I be forced to sell my property? Of course, we have no ability to force anyone to sell a property. People who own property have every right of ownership, and there's no way that we as an institution could force them to sell. Although I would mention that when people have elected to sell, we certainly have been a fair market purchaser of homes in that area. There were also comments specifically about our campus growth and how it might relate to some water issues in that area. There's been a number of storm sewer projects that have occurred in that area. We understand that to the east even of this rezone request, there's a natural bowl that exists in conversations that we've had with the city. As you know, we also are required any project that we would do that takes away any type of green space, we're required to provide best management practices or BMP practices to retain runoff water, and we certainly meet or exceed those requirements in any request. Menlo Park has been a topic of conversation and how that park would be used, etc. As was already mentioned, that's not part of this rezone request. We've been asked about additional green space and would we be willing to be involved in green spaces around our campus. And I'd just like to demonstrate that south of our children's hospital that currently exists, we established when we built that building approximately 97,000 square feet of green space that we've retained specifically to blend into that neighborhood and be part of providing green spaces in our community. And just in terms of reference, Menlo Park, including the water tower, is approximately 71,000 square feet. So we've exceeded even the size of that park in that particular area. We've also been asked about parking structures versus surface parking. We currently have parking structures in place. In fact, of our 4,500 or so total parking spaces, 49% of the parking that we provide are already in physical structures, and those physical structures or above ground structures are part of our future and part of our plan. But one of the things with a parking structure is it's a 50 to 75 year plan. And before we build a parking structure, we need to be absolutely certain of where is the best place for that structure, how large do you build it, etc. So we're certainly not opposed to above ground parking, but we're just not at a point yet of knowing exactly where that should be. You know, our purpose is to care for the sick and injured, and the growth of our community and our region and the healthcare services that we provide is just a natural evolution. We expect that we will continue to grow, and I again ask you to please think favorably of this request, and I'd be happy to answer questions if you have any.
Mr. Cheddar, thank you very much. Folks, anybody else want to speak on this topic? Welcome.
My name's Evelyn Greasy, and I don't live exactly within these boundaries, but the rezoning request impacts more than just those surrounding areas or the area within the boundaries. It affects the people that live on the perimeter of those boundaries. I've had comments from people who live just adjacent to these boundaries that affected the quality of their residence, the views that they have, the traffic patterns have been interrupted just by the construction of the cardiac hospital. So it affects that periphery. It also tends to affect, set a precedent, and I know precedents have been set already, but we don't need to compound what I think is the wrong decision of expanding to the east by granting this request. I hope that you will choose to not grant it at this time and even to put it off into the future. When I think about the amount of neighborhood space that's going to be taken over, and I don't think that will take a very long time for that neighborhood to vanish or to certainly be altered and no longer be what I would consider a neighborhood. And I think that's a terrible thing to waste or to lose in a city that already has a deficit of the affordable housing for the people that live in this area. And I know most of the people are renters. So I do feel that this is not the best use of the land, that it should stay residential until Sanford can say that, yes, we've got some plans in place for going to the south and building upward and converting some of that, the street level parking into upper multi-level parking. That could be done. There's, I know there can be the cost factor that is considered. One of the employees at Sioux Valley, or at Sanford, I'm sorry, I'm an old employee of Sanford and Sioux Valley, and I still go there to work. And I walk through this area every day I go to work. But this particular employee gave me an August 2nd, 2009 article from the Argus that has 3 properties that were sold in that area, in the Prairie Avenue area, 1100 block, for $300,000. That would indicate to me if Sanford has picked up all of these other properties and has actually paid these kinds of amounts, that kind of dollar in total could have certainly built up 2 to maybe 3 levels of above ground parking. So planning ahead would certainly be a nice information about why there can't be more expansion to the south and right on the campus, the existing campus itself, to continue to save this neighborhood as long as possible so that people do have a place to live, and maybe the city needs to come up with another housing plan that lets people have homes, not necessarily apartments, but actual homes where families can raise their kids or individuals can have their home surfaces right on ground level and not have to go to an apartment complex, having their own green space where they can take care of it. I really oppose having this neighborhood section taken out of a neighborhood zoning factor. It's the green space, the expansion that could be taken, the other options that Sanford does have. I wish that they would project forward for us what they plan to do with the space they already have. I can see various options for putting buildings on the existing campus and going to the south. I really feel very, very strongly about taking a neighborhood out of a city and not even having really an idea of what's going on in the other land space that Sanford has.
Evelyn, thank you very much. Folks, anybody else want to speak on this item? Oh, welcome, Mr. Weiderman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm I.L. Weiderman from Sioux Falls. I have a problem with this because Sanford has completely encompassed the park. And Mr. Cooper states, in my opinion, the way he phrased it, eventually that park will disappear and the whole thing will become part of a campus for Sanford. We don't need to lose any more green space. We don't need Sanford coming in and just enveloping, and that's what he's done. He's encompassed the whole park. How are you going to get to that park if he builds around it? I mean, he's completely encompassed it. That would be my question. I would move that you cancel it out.
Thank you, Mr. Weiderman. Sir, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Dave Heckenlively. I live at 1211 South Summit. Again, I'm just outside of the area that's going to be purchased. This area is prone to flooding, even with your $40 million investment in the storm sewer, it still floods. And my concern is that when we, in the process of redeveloping this area, I want to make sure that it doesn't flood again. And I would hope that one of the ideas I had is I think you should go and see the lay of the land. I think every one of you should take a tour of the place just to see what it's like. If you were at 21st and Menlo and walked around that park, you would probably be at 20th and say Waltz, you would probably be 20 feet lower than what you were where you were at 21st and Menlo. So that's, you know, if they're going to make this thing flat or are they going to make it tiered, you know, how is that going to operate? If they're, you know, running water in that area, the sewer pipelines in that area are actually on 19th Street. All that water is running north toward 19th Street. But I would recommend that each one of you at least go out and see what their future plans are. I mean, this is zoning. It's, I guess, as a property owner, you can do what you want to. But what I want to make sure is that when they do start this construction, that you guys are aware of what they're doing there and that it doesn't cause more flooding for the people who are still going to be left living there. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the city park. That water tower has only been there a little more than 10 years, so I don't think they're going to be moving the water tower anytime soon. But there is a small park there. Now, our closest park, if they're going to close it, is Spelleberg Park or McKinnon Park. There is a small one at another one-block park at Campus Park at 26th and Summit, but it's usually ice skating in the wintertime whenever we have snow and stuff, you know. But the rest of the time, it's a lot of activity there with the students from USF. So touch football, you know, things like that. So that's not really a park, so to speak. But I think our area still needs a park. So I would hope that you would retain that park. I would hope that you would provide access to it somehow, you know, with the company. But also your utility people are there a lot too. I walk around that area and the people that are in charge of the water tower, there's a lot of communication antennas on the top, so there's occasionally people there to do the repairs on that place. They don't come in just a little car or a pickup. They have this monster truck that comes there and they're doing work in there, so they have to have access too. So that's it.
Mr. Eckenlivy, very good. Thank you very much. Welcome.
It's the last place I wanted to be tonight.
Ma'am, if you could just state your name,
My
please.
name's Diane Hoovey.
Thanks, Diane.
I live in 812 Southwest Avenue. I've been before. Kenny Anderson, Greg Jameson, and unfortunately, Kermit Steiger's not here. My house sits on Sanford's campus. I am the only owner left on that block that lives in that house, Mr. Mayor. You are the people's mayor, or are you certain people's mayor? We will find out tonight, because we've been pushed out of our neighborhoods one way or the other by Sanford. You will go. They don't build up, they build out. They don't move out, they stay there. They take over your good people's homes of Sioux Falls, and you will have nothing but criminals living in them hoods that's left. Because that's what's in my neighborhood now. My dog's sickened, a rifle shot went off by my house, and this is how they improved my neighborhood. And I have called A1 Rentals about this concern and talked to their manager, Rose, twice. And them people are still there. And you don't get complaints once they've taken over the hood, because they're all living like that. And they will be your druggies, they will be your criminals, and they're not going to call in the complaints to the officers. Why? Because they're living that way and they're not going to do it. And now you've got high crime, high drugs, and you know what? You go check it out in Minneapolis sometime. Go check it out in Denver. Go check it out in Chicago. These cities had a chance too to make it right. Keep your people there. We care about the hood now. You move us out, we don't. Why am I staying? Lord, I have no idea. I wanted out. I almost got out. But the deal I was trying to get fell through. It wasn't the deal I was getting from Sanford. This is the deal you get from Sanford. They will buy your first neighbor out at a very expensive fee, which you had heard here. And once they're gone, then you get the junk in there. And then they move into the next house and the next house. And maybe you had a change in life, so you wanted to sell your house to Sanford willingly. So they will make you a willingful seller one way or the other. They don't go any further north. Why? I live there. They had great opposition. But the rumor came to me that they found a chink in our hood. It's called going east. An old man came to me one day and he said, Sanford someday will be all the way to 12th Street, Minnesota Avenue. Did we not hear them say they wanted to get to Minnesota Avenue? Western, and I don't know how far south they're going to go. Kermit's not here to defend his college he works at, which I heard rumors that he was going to try to bow out tonight so he didn't have to look at this mess. When does this stop? People, I look at each and one of you. Kenny Anderson, there you sit again tonight. Are you going to vote yes again? One more time for a neighborhood to be lost so that we have no affordable housing. So we have no good people of Sioux Falls left. Your heart, your core. I have been in this town for 28 years. 30 counting the years I spent at Augustana College. And I'm sure you're all upset that I'm an educated person standing before you defending poor, poverty people. We don't need our town like this. And once the cartel druggers get in here, you'll never get them out. Yes, if you've watched the news, they're coming to the Midwest. They're in Chicago right now. The police know they are. Why? Because the MO of the death rate is their stamp. And they don't know how they're going to get them out of here. And you know what? Geographically, you sit just right for them. You're right in the middle of Denver, Minneapolis, and Chicago. And you know where all the criminals come to sit? Right by the hospitals. Check at Hennepin County. My son works there. He goes, Mom, why are those people getting hurt and coming to us, and then all of a sudden they don't come anymore? Well, here's your three options. They either turn their will and their life over and they're not doing it anymore, or they're incarcerated, or they're dead. Take your pick. Why do they hang about the hospitals? Because that's where you get stabbed, you get hurt, you get beat, and you can get help. So you don't leave around that area. Try to see Hennepin County. It's the poorest county in that state. It's a mess downtown. You want your downtown, Mr. Mayor, like this? Are you for the people, or are you for the big boys that are going to come along and shove us out? Build it up, build it out, but don't build it on our land. Build it out on the suburban areas.
Diane, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Again, folks, if you could just, in respect of all the people, we'd ask that you just hold your applause and your comments in respect of the people that are speaking tonight. Thank you. Welcome. Sir, again, just in respect of the council, if you just hold your comments, you certainly have the ability to speak publicly, but if you're not, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Sir, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councilor. My name is Bob Sievertson. 57 years ago, my wife and I bought a starter home. It's number 6 on the map. It's the front porch overlooks Menlo Park. And I must tell you that I'm disappointed in the city planners and the Planning Commission for not asking some obvious questions. Obvious questions. If a private developer went to the Planning Commission and said, we'd like you to rezone 5 blocks. We're going to tear 50 homes down, and we might just build a clinic, but don't, you don't have to tell us where it is. Just and they'd give us that authorization. So there's so many questions that haven't been answered in this proposal, obvious questions. Not the least of which is Menlo Park. it will be completely surrounded by the Sanford campus. The question of parking lots, multi-level parking lots, or I don't take issue with it. It's cheaper to build get parking spaces without building up. But it seems to me, as a planning commissioner, if you're looking at the future of Sioux Falls, if you're considering 5 blocks for parking, or 1 block with 5 stories for parking, shouldn't you investigate that proposition for in a year's? There are obvious reasons for me. It seems to me, although more expensive, you might want to build a multi-story parking lot for the employees and the people that solicit the health care. So it would seem to me that if the planners are looking long range for the welfare of the city, they should put that proposition to them. And they claim to be good citizens. Now, the green spot, the green space, the people that aren't in this area but surrounding it have a legitimate concern. And wouldn't it be possible for a conditional use before the rezoning that the hospital and these neighbors sit down, and the hospital, I'm sure, would say, yeah, we're going to have a little green space, we're going to have a berm, and perhaps flowers and a fountain between the parking lots. You know, why shouldn't that be done? What's the hurry? Why shouldn't that be done before the rezoning to get to work that out? And there's one more shoe that's going to hit the deck. The proposal, I think, is to expand that campus. You all heard the deal between Minnesota Avenue and West Avenue, between 18th and 22nd. And before that deal goes down, you as city officials, elected officials, should sit down with probably people at a little higher pay scale than the people that are representing the hospital today. Talk to Mr. Sanford, Mr. Krabenoff, and let us know what you're going to do with the central part of our city. Are you going to build, is your proposal going to be 2 5-story buildings surrounded by parking lots, or what is your plan? It's as elected officials, it seems to me you should demand that not from the underlings, but from Mr. Sanford, Mr. Kavanaugh. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob, very much. We appreciate that. Welcome.
George Hamilton. Could we bring up the graph that you had up a second ago that showed all of the properties that proposed?
Mike?
The proposed site, all of the properties that Sanford owns currently? No, I mean the bigger layout that showed. Okay. So this is all of the properties that they currently own right now? Okay.
Oops. Just a second, I'm getting there.
Yeah. Okay, right there. Okay. Are these, I'm asking this one as for Sanford and the properties that they manage through A+, I believe it is. Are these all of the properties, whether they're residential or commercial, that Sanford owns, only the ones that are up there listed? Can somebody answer that question, if those are the only properties that they own?
George, what we'd ask you to do is, if you do have questions or you do have comments, just go right ahead and relay those. And then later on, George, what will happen is either Mr. Cooper or the council, they'll engage that topic. So go right ahead. You've got another 3.5 minutes, so have a good time.
No problem. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
All right. The question is, for the properties that Sanford currently owns, and I'm only talking about the residential properties that are rentals right now, okay? These are older homes that were one-time single-family homes. Some of them now are just rentals of single-family homes. Some of them are rentals of duplex, triplex, fourplex, even fiveplexes in some of these here and stuff. Okay. Now, she spoke of affordable housing and the difference between the houses that they are acquiring or already have acquired is that the ones that Sanford currently has, there's been no effort whatsoever to do an upkeep of these properties, okay? And I mean from roofing to the asbestos siding on the houses to the asphalt shingles. These houses have just been left as the way they are because they know in the future that these houses will be torn down and everything and stuff. So as she spoke to the effort about the lower income or even the sub-income people who've moved into these houses that are being rented out and stuff, that we have crime and all of the stuff in the neighborhood, it's because these houses are not being kept up and they are bringing in rents well below fair market value of rent, okay? So if I can get for the properties that I own, that Greg owns or whatever, $600, $700, $800, even $1,000 a property, they're renting properties in the range from $350 to $600 because the houses don't have any appeal that would make anybody want to pay more to stay in these houses. So it's just a continuing cycle to devalue the neighborhood as it is by letting rundown properties just stay run down, by having people stay in these houses who really are more or less transient in some parts and stuff, you know. They move from house to house to house and stuff, you know. No credit reports required to move into the houses, just a deposit and stuff. And, you know, no building permits taken out, trash being accumulated in the yards, people calling in, nobody being responsible to take care of these things and stuff. So I just see a continued path, as like I said, the growth to go all the way to Minnesota Avenue, to go all the way to 12th if possible and stuff, because I know there are more houses that we go around and look at that are owned by Sanford that are not going to be rehabilitated. They're just going to be left to languish until, you know, as she said, if you have a good property that you wanted to hold on, that you've raised your family in there and that you're trying to have as a family and stuff, but all the other houses are just being left to fall apart, there's no need for Sanford to go in and rehab any of these properties. As long as they've owned these properties, they could put the money that they're talking about, they want to invest in the thing, invest into the houses that are right there. Bring the quality of living up for those people who are in the neighborhood right now, as opposed to depressing the quality of the housing to bring in lower and, you know, people that are just moving in and out back and forth with no long-term investment in the community.
Thank you, George. Well, folks, thank you. Very, very good dialogue. We certainly appreciate it and certainly appreciate the professionalism as well. Thank you. We'll now turn it over to the council. Council, any questions, comments, motions? Councilor Rebroadcast.
I just have a question for Mr. Cooper. Which are the properties that want to be excluded? Was it 1315 and 1317 South Waltz? Do you need an amendment from
It's
us?
11 and 12.
Yep.
Item number 11 and 12, I know, but how do we say it in the amendment is what I'm asking, I guess.
We can do it on the exhibit, excluding properties number 11 and 12. And those are 1315 and 1317 South Waltz, owned by Irvin and Greg Fitters.
Okay, thank you. And then I have one other question.
Yes, Councilor.
Mr. Cooper, could you clarify for us the timing on that? You said that you're going to be, that city staff is going to talk about that park. Can you talk about the timing on that and what might be the beginning of that conversation? Where might we be headed with that?
Well, we knew that, that people would be concerned about the potential impact of Menlo Park. It is a nice neighborhood park, and it does have an elevated water structure that is integral to the city infrastructure. So before any decision would be made to move that, to relocate it, there would be dialogue with the park board, the park staff, the hospital staff, and the neighborhoods. By state law and city ordinance, we can't just eliminate a park, but we can relocate open spaces. So we would say, where can we find a comparable or even a better parcel of land to develop a brand new neighborhood park? Right now, the closest parks would be Campus Park and Emerson Park, and then Lowell Elementary is nearby as well. So I would say those discussions could start soon, but that would be more of a very long-term decision that we would enter into.
Well,
Councilor, please.
Just a little farther. I'm confused by what I'm hearing from folks that it's going to be surrounded by the hospital. It'll be surrounded by this zoning district if this passes. I understand that, but there's direct access to it on 21st Street. And you know me, I'm big on parks and green space, but my concern, I guess, would be, first of all, that it's still accessible and will be for the near long term.
Yes.
But then will we, get out your crystal ball for me, will we do a park similar in size and sort of in the same area? We aren't going to say, we're trading you this property for a property at, 69th and Southeastern or whatever. It's going to be that area somehow, right?
With our policy on neighborhood parks, we want them to be within a half-a-mile walking distance. So if we looked at moving this, then we would again sit down and say, where is the best place to place that so that it can still serve the neighborhoods?
Okay.
And we would do that in conjunction with the park staff, the hospitals in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
You bet, Councilor. Yes, Councilor Anderson Jr.
Continue along that line, Mike. The general plan has been for Sanford as they've collected properties is to vacate streets. All right, so what's the plan there?
Well, the zoning includes the street right-of-way, or the exhibit includes the street right-of-way. Those will remain public streets until there's a petition to vacate them or change them, which goes through a pretty extensive public review process, as the council is aware of. I would say that, as we've done in the past, the rezoning is the first step in the process. And I know one of the gentlemen mentioned that there should be more detail presented tonight, but the zoning is the first step in the process. And as I said during the staff presentation, with this plan development zoning, before any construction can occur, then it has to go through more detailed review of a property by property basis, whether it's a building or a parking structure or a parking lot. And that holds true as well for the street vacations. If there's going to be an elimination of a public street, then it would have to go through our public review and would have to be approved by the city council at a public hearing.
Would also the sale of a city park have to go through the city council?
Well, it may not be the sale, it may be a transfer to another better location is where it might happen.
Okay, and then I guess my whole train of thought now, Mike, on this is why haven't we already started this discussion? As you can see right now, we are getting ready to surround this property.
This rezoning is the first step in a multi-year master planning process, Councilor. Again, based on our historical work with both Sanford and Vera, they want to get out ahead of get the zoning approved, and then they begin to master plan the details of what their future needs are going to be. So it would be premature on our part to start saying, before we approve the zoning, we're going to identify where the park might go, but we would begin that process after the zoning is changed. That would be the time that we would start working on that. And I've already had preliminary discussions with the park staff as well as Public Works about the water tower. So that's a long-term process that we're going to be going through. There isn't going to be an immediate development project that's going to surround Menlo Park. That's not going to happen for some time into the future.
Okay, then, if I may.
Please.
To Mr. Cheddar, what is the current plans or near future plans for this development?
Thank you for your question. I would refer to the uses within the Planned Development District. We do not currently have a plan drawn for what we intend to build where. Our first intention is, of course, to relieve parking, which is one of the major issues on our campus. And we've also indicated, and that was not in my comments so far this evening, but to the Planning Commission when we met with them and also with the Planning and Zoning meeting, that we're also looking at the possibility of clinic facilities in this new area, but we simply do not have that plan yet. As Mr. Cooper mentioned, this is the first step. We see this as the first brick in the process to be able to demonstrate that we even have the ability to build something in this area.
Mayor?
Councilor?
Okay. Something that in the comment that you said, are you going to be taking down properties? You're going to raise this all for a parking lot then? Is that what we're looking at in the near future?
Again, we have no specific plans for the area. I can't tell you that we're going to take houses down at this point. The natural evolution as we've acquired properties and had to move in terms of building, if there are properties in the way, we have removed properties as evidenced by some of the other building projects. We do not have that plan today and have not demonstrated that plan in this process because frankly the first step is the rezoning.
Councilor Rolfing.
Please stay there if you would. I'm going to take a little bit of a devil's advocate. And that would be that, you know, if I was a large developer like my fellow counselor sitting over there, I would, in taking pieces here, I would, if I owned all the lots there and the homes that were in there, and I used to, my first house was over on Summit, right real close there that my wife and I bought 40 years ago. I would let them not get very, well, let's just put, I would not keep them up very well if I knew that they were going to come down pretty quick. And it appears that may be what's happening. Is that, can I just ask you directly, is that what's happening? What's the upkeep schedule? Do you have a schedule on those? Are you keeping them up? Because from what we've heard here, that is not necessarily the case.
We did hear from both the neighborhood meeting that we held and also at the Planning Commission meeting that was held here a month ago, concerns about the condition of rental properties, garbage, etc. We immediately contacted our rental agency. We don't do that work ourselves. We have an agency that takes care of that for us. We were promised that there would be more stringent routes where they would physically go to these properties. As is mentioned, there's been a number of renters that in some cases are in and out of properties, and it's difficult to manage that, but we certainly accept that responsibility, and as I've mentioned, we've asked them to increase their vigilance on those properties to the ability that we have.
Because if the situation was that, you know, they were going to get torn down or whatever, you'd let them go. If you didn't have a plan, you know, you'd want to keep the income coming in from them because otherwise at least you'd be able to pay the taxes on them with it and keep that going and keep the neighborhood intact for as long as you could.
One other comment related to that, if I may.
Yeah.
There are a number of properties over the course of years that we knew were going to be raised, and as those properties are identified, it requires us to disconnect utilities and do asbestos abatements, etc. But we've used those properties for a variety of purposes, including some of the agencies in the community that come into those homes and take anything that's usable to salvage those items rather than just have them destroyed or toted away. And also have used them for police activities, fire activities, etc. prior to those houses being raised. So there may be some that are being identified perhaps in that regard. I obviously can't speak for those
Also
folks.
given some to Habitat for Humanity to be rehabbed
Yeah,
too, I believe.
we have worked with Habitat for Humanity. Jim Schmidt from the Sioux Falls Housing, or Sioux Empire Housing Partnership sent me a letter today, actually, that identified when you move a property, it has to then come up to the current code, and they've found in their experience that to be prohibitive in terms of cost, and so consequently most of the structures are having items removed from them that can be used prior to their destruction.
Okay. Talk about this going up instead of out with parking and things like that. And we've had a lot of people, I've had calls about people saying, why can't they just go up instead of, you know, spreading out so much? Can you give us a little
I think I would go back to my original comment. I didn't talk about pricing, although I can. We have bids from a consultant that has been with us and worked with us in terms of parking strategy and where we believe we should build parking, et cetera. The cost of building up is 10 times greater than the cost of building out when it comes to parking. The cost of a single parking stall in a structure approaches $36,000 per vehicle, and that is roughly 10 times the cost of building laterally. The other point that I hope that I made in my earlier comments is when you build a structure that's going to be there 50 to 75 years, you need to be certain that what's built around it and where you build it is the exact place for it to be, because it's a structure that is incredibly costly and will be there for a very extended length of time.
I needed one more question if I could. And
Councilor Rolfe, go ahead.
I'm just wondering who I should ask. Something about affordable housing with it.
Why don't you ask a question, Councilor, and then we'll get the right person up there.
I'm wondering about affordable housing. Who's
Darren, would you mind coming forward? Darren Smith.
I was hoping, okay. How are we doing with affordable housing in Sioux Falls?
Well, I can say this. The city did a study in 2010 with affordable housing and identified really two primary needs. One is for senior income qualifying housing. Senior by definition is over 55. And the second greatest need we have as a community is for the population making less than 40% of the median family income, which for a family of four in Sioux Falls is about $69,000, $70,000, so 40% of that or less. That was the second area of greatest need.
Okay, didn't answer the question of how are we doing with it. Do we have adequate?
Well, I think it's fair to say what the study told us is we have needs in both areas, and you've seen, and you'll continue to see a somewhat significant amount of the income qualifying senior housing being built, and one that we're really focused on is that population that is under 40% of the median family income. That's something our department is tackling along with nonprofit groups and some private developers. But the senior housing seems to be the one that's gaining the most attention. We're not there yet, but I think we're getting there. I would also say to the comment a moment ago about the cost to move homes, I would agree with that. We've certainly looked at that, and the cost to move existing homes is I would say, essentially cost prohibitive. And the city has some experience with that. A few years ago, Mike Cooper, I'm sure will remember, I think it was Lacey Park, Mike, and Jim Schmidt was directly involved in that, and I know they certainly found that to be the case.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Karski.
A couple things that all the correspondence I received had a lot to do with parking. Mr. Cooper, I know we have requirements from retail and office for a certain amount of parking. Do we require the same thing from institutional?
What we've done over the years with both the hospitals and the college campuses, because they are unique, is that rather than having a set standard of one space per whatever, that we have them put together a campus parking master plan. And again, that's something that we review each time there's an expansion proposed, whether it's a building or parking. And that's what we use to judge, what the needs are on a case-by-case basis. we know that parking is always going to be an issue around both of the hospitals. And that's why it's difficult to come up with a standard of one space for whatever size building area. But the campus master plan for parking, we get to review that each time there's a building permit or a building review project that we have to take a look at. And that has worked well over the years because, as you heard from Mr. Cheddar, before anybody would invest in a multi-million-dollar parking garage, you want to make sure it's going to be in the right spot. And many times the parking lots are a transitional use temporarily, and then that will be followed either by a building or by a parking structure somewhere later on down the road.
Okay. And I'd like to come back to parking, but out of the 13 blue that we have on our map here, how many of those are landlords? How many are actual resident property owners? Do we know?
I don't know for sure how many of them are owner-occupied versus renter-occupied.
Okay.
That I did not get ahead of time.
Okay. Thank you. And then going back to the parking, if I could, for Mr. Cheddar, my last question. As I said earlier, the comments I'm getting, the emails, the phone calls, it has to do with the parking and the employees, or maybe the perception of employee parking. What do you guys do to encourage your employees to park in, provided, do you have enough parkings for all your employees at any one time?
I referenced a study that we did recently. It's within the last year. We brought in a parking consulting firm that took a look at all the parking, took a look at when employees are there, what our patient volumes are, et cetera. We currently, by the total number, have adequate parking. We have enough parking for those people that come to our campus. The issues are those parking spaces located near or close to where people would prefer to park, both patients, families, and of course our employees.
So when you say adequate, you mean adequate off-street or to include the street?
Yes, no, adequate off-street. Okay. They didn't count, the consultant would not take into consideration parking that occurs outside of the lots and outside of the ramps that we provide. And I mentioned earlier in my comments that number is about 4,500, just over 4,500 total parking spaces. And in the equation that is used by the consultants, they demonstrate to us that that number is adequate today. It will not be adequate in 2 years, and it will be grossly inadequate in 10 years. So part of our plan as we're moving forward is to establish short-term fixes, which is generally surface parking. And as was just articulated, oftentimes surface parking is a transition for us, something that's used for a period of time while other developments are coming into place, decisions about clinic buildings, et cetera, and then later those areas can be either conformed into clinic-type facility or some medical use with associated parking along with it.
Thank you.
Council, the dialogue has been great, and we don't have to discontinue the dialogue or cease it, but maybe in the spirit of moving this either one way or the other, would anybody be willing to make a motion on this item, and then we can certainly continue the dialogue?
Move to approve, Karski.
Second, Erpenbach.
There's been a motion to approve item number 37, and it was seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. Is there any discussion? Councilor Jameson.
Yes, there were a few other questions that came up from the public that I just want to make sure we get covered if we could. You know, one of them was the issue of water, drainage. And it's just my assumption that, you know, those neighborhoods were developed under old standards for treating water and managing water runoff. And I would think with the new standards that water should be managed probably effectively. Unless I'm talking different, I see Andy Berg out there. Andy, are you nodding yes or no, or could you add a comment on here, because it's one of the questions that came up.
Andy, is Councilor Jameson assuming correctly, or would you want to refute anything?
Yes, anything that is done with any developments in this area would be held to our current standards for drainage runoff.
And would those standards be higher and better than previous ones, when that neighborhood was developed?
In general, yes.
Okay. The other one is if I could, a lot of emotional testimony here tonight, but the one that got me the most, I think, is the concern of crime or deteriorating homes. And Councilor Rolfing hit on it a little bit, and I'm not sure that I was totally satisfied. If I could get some further dialogue here, that what is your practice when, because it makes a lot of sense to me, if I bought 16 homes and had sprinkled in there a couple of people who were going to stay, that tearing down all my 16 homes wouldn't make sense at that time. I would wait. So I'm not feeling the warm and fuzzy here about that you're maybe maintaining those to the standard that you should or could. Convince me that you are.
Well, again, it's not work that we do. We hire that work done. We've asked the current provider of that work to step up and do a better job. I have a meeting next week with I'm reluctant to divulge too much business practice in this setting, but I can tell you that I'm meeting with a different provider next week to have conversation about that very thing. Are we the standard in the industry? Are we getting what we're paying for? Are we providing the type of service that we should? I have that meeting scheduled. It's on my calendar for next week. It's a result of this process. Primarily in our meeting that we had with our neighbors, there were a number of people who voiced these properties are not maintained appropriately, etc. I believe we're doing what we can in that regard to try and address that issue, including looking at perhaps even someone else who might do that work.
And if I could, I get the fact that you're probably unable to divulge too many of your long-range development plans, just in the nature of the competition, at least in the way things are in this town. But I sense that the neighbors are concerned about that as soon as we approve this, that it's going to be a free-for-all for you to develop whatever you would want. And is it true that pretty well anything that you've done already would more likely be mirrored in this new development versus anything that we've never seen in our city?
I think that's a very fair statement, that if you look at our campus, a campus that frankly we're very proud of, the way that we've developed, the restrictions that frankly come in building permits and zoning, etc., I think that you can expect that what we do in the future would be very similar to what you've seen previously. And it also referred back to a comment Mr. Cooper made regarding this is only the first step. We're not here with a building plan. We're not here with requests for specific projects, etc. And there is a process for that we must follow, and we, of course, would do that.
One more, if I could, just wrap it up with the purchase policy that you have for these homeowners. I've heard it that others are uncomfortable with approaching you with the willingness to sell because they feel like they might be lured into a trap of some sort because they're coming to you. Have you approached all of these property owners? Do you even approach them? What is your
within
policy?
The rezoning request?
Yes.
Every one of them, and I should have mentioned that in my earlier comments, everyone was contacted regarding this rezoning process. We have not contacted them asking to buy their properties, if I understood your question
Yes,
correctly.
you did. That's right.
Yeah.
What I was getting at is that it's a touchy deal with, Sanford wanting to come buy your property. Well, should I hold out, try to get more? Well, if I call them, it looks like I might be vulnerable to sell. I more so wanted to make it public knowledge that this area is for purchase. And if you're a homeowner and you wanted to sell, it's a touchy subject, I guess, to try to get the most you can out of your home, but you do not need to sell. You can stay there as long as you want.
Correct. And frankly, if I may,
yes.
The process, in fact, this process of asking to rezone has prompted a number of people to come forward and say, would you be interested in our property? And we have a process in place when someone is interested in selling to us. If it's a property that we're interested in, we follow an appraisal process. That appraisal is done by a third party. We don't do our own appraisals. We don't ask the homeowner to do the appraisal, and we follow a process. And I did comment earlier we think we're a very fair purchaser in that process.
Councilor Bach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Cheddar. I just have some comments. Thank you. You know, as a city council, we rezone properties without a specific construction plan every month. This really is no different. We will watch very closely as this development occurs, assuming this passes tonight. I want you to remember this is my neighborhood. This is in the Central District, you know, and I used to live within 5 blocks of the Sanford campus. I am proud to represent these neighbors, and I have walked alongside many of them as they have worked through these issues. But I am also proud to represent the progressive growth that this plan represents, progressive, controlled growth. Like Councilor Jameson, I'm disappointed to hear these neighborhoods are not being kept up to standards, and I have talked with Sanford about that. I support this growth and change, but I expect property owners to be good neighbors, and I expect people who observe issues to call 911 and help keep our entire city safe. And I encourage my colleagues to vote in favor of this.
We do have a motion on the floor. We've had really good dialogue on all kinds of different topics. And we have more dialogue. Councilor Aguilar.
No, I just have a question for the chief. Could he specifically speak to crime in that area?
Chief Barthel.
Unfortunately, I don't have the statistics for that area. Certainly, I mean, when you look at the core area of our city, there's more crime than there is in, say, some of the outlying areas. Wouldn't necessarily characterize this area as a high crime neighborhood.
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, good dialogue. We do have a motion on the floor. I know there was the discussion about a proposed amendment. I don't know if we would want to tackle that or not.
I would do that.
Councilor Urbanbach?
I would move to amend removing properties that were labeled items 11 and 12 on the exhibits.
Ms. Cooper, is that appropriate?
That's appropriate.
Right. Is there a second on that?
Second, Aguilar.
There is an amendment to this proposal by Councilor Urbanbach, seconded by Councilor Aguilar. It has been confirmed by Mr. Cooper that the language is appropriate. Is there any discussion? A roll call vote on the amendment, please.
Council members Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entenmann? Urbanbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 6-0. We now have an amended main motion to discuss or to vote on. Any further discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Urbanbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 6-0. Item 38.
Item 38 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a major amendment petition number 2012-0708 to Chapter 15.45.070, Planned Development Districts at West 58th Street and South Rolling Green Avenue, allowing changes in land use as reflected in the revised sub-area regulations, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This is a petition submitted by the owners, represented by Peter Gower Corporation of this property. It consists of about 9 acres in size. It's part of the Pana addition, and this is located just south of West 58th Street. This tract was originally approved for office development as part of a major office park development as anticipated a number of years ago. The developers are now asking for this to be changed so that it could be developed as multifamily residential. So tonight we have a case that we're being asked to change the zoning without a specific development plan. Subject to your consideration of this tonight, the next step will be a final development plan that would be presented to the Planning Commission that would be a specific detailed building layout, including parking. So this request tonight is to change the use from office to multifamily residential. The site will accommodate approximately 130 to 140 multifamily units, and the recommendation by the Planning Commission is to approve the request. And I don't believe we had any public input at the Planning Commission meeting.
Is there anybody who wanted to speak to this item who's here in the audience tonight? Very good. Council?
Move to approve Erpenbach.
Second Entenmann.
Anderson.
It's been a motion to approve by Councilor Bach, seconded by Councilor Entenmann. Is there any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 39.
Item number 39 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending Article 2 of Chapter 23 and Article 7 of Chapter 26 of the revised ordinances of Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Chief, welcome.
Good evening. This is the second reading of the false alarm ordinance, which was covered in great detail in the Public Services Committee. It's a lengthy ordinance. I won't go through all the details, but just hit a couple of quick highlights. Again, the main reason we want to have this change is the high number of false alarms that we've been experiencing. We average about 2,000 false alarms in our city every year. For example, last year we had about just under 2,000, and of those 18 were valid alarms. We have one business this year that we've had 21 false alarm calls to so far this year. So with less than 1% of those over 5 average per day, certainly there's some room to improve there. Right now there's no teeth and no incentive to do that. This ordinance would do a couple of things. It would first hopefully reduce the number of false alarms and then also put some restrictions on the alarm companies themselves. Right now it's very possible for fly-by-night companies to come in and open up shop and less than reputable businesses. So we have met with alarm companies in the past, have certainly had their support, and with this proposal, we would require the alarm companies to pay a $75 initial fee and then a $35 renewal per year. That would just help cover a small part of our time and costs that go into it with criminal background checks and so forth. And then for those that experience a false alarm within a 12-month period, for the first offense, it would be no civil penalty. The second offense would be $50, the third one's $100, and fourth and subsequent offenses would be $200. It also requires those alarm users to respond in a timely manner and have people that we are able to get a hold of and able to come out in the middle of the night or whenever we might need them. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Is there anyone who wanted to speak to this item in the audience? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Tracy Still. I just had a couple of things I wanted to say just in general about this. I don't really have a problem with charging people a little bit of money for false alarm. You know, the people that are using the services of the police should be the ones to pay for it, especially when they're, especially if they're wasting their time. But along the other issue, as far as the other part of this bill is the regulation and the licensing. When you increase the cost of doing something, you get less of it. That's a fact. That's just basic economics. When you increase red tape and hassle of doing something, you get less of it. And that includes licensing, the cost of licensing, regulation. You specifically are increasing the cost of running a crime prevention company, which means that you will have less crime prevention. Less crime prevention means more crime. So therefore, the cost of licensing and regulation of crime prevention companies like private security surveillance systems means that you will have more crime. This is basic economics and logic. Now, if your public policy is to reduce crime, your goal should be to reduce the cost of private security companies to do business. Now, if your goal is to, get more money for the city, and if your goal is to control people, then maybe that part of the proposal is a good proposal. But I think you need to ask yourself, do you want to actually protect people and make them safer? Is that the goal? Or is your goal to control people? Because those are two very different things and they don't necessarily coincide with each other. Only you can answer that question, but I would encourage you to amend the bill to gut the licensure section of it. We don't need more regulations. One person here mentioned that, the chief, I guess, mentioned that mentioned that some of the security companies actually supported this. Well, a lot of course they will, because it's going to prevent new competition. It's going to cause more barriers to entry into the marketplace. very rarely do established businesses believe in free markets. They believe in protectionism from competition. And legal barriers to entry, like licensure, creates a type of oligopoly which discourages new entrants into the marketplace and discourages competition. And when companies don't have to worry about new competition, responsiveness to the customers go down, customer service goes down, rates go up. Again, reiterating my point that you'll have less crime prevention and therefore more crime. And so, anyway, and then the other thing is that people can decide for themselves who they want to do business with. People can take their own responsibility and choose who they want to do business with. So I think you should just gut that portion of the bill. I don't think it serves it doesn't send a good message, and so I would appreciate you to listen to my comments. The other part regarding false alarms, like I said, I don't have a problem with that, but I do think it's a little bit excessive. I have a neighbor who works for one of these companies, and they say that in Sioux City, you don't start getting fined until after the third offense. So I think it's a little excessive. I think if you would amend the bill to change it to, you're allowed once a month or something a little bit more liberal than once a year before you start paying fines, that would be good. The other thing, too, is that this is supposed to recoup the cost of the police for having to respond and waste their time at an event. That money should be going to the police department, not to the general coffers. Again, do you want to actually prevent crime, or do you just want to enrich the city? So I would thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Tracy. Folks, anybody else want to speak to this item? Very good. Council, it's now in your hands.
Move approval. Erpenbach.
Second Intiman.
It's been a motion to approve by Councilor Erpenbach, seconded by Councilor Intiman. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Intiman.
If I might, I might just add a couple of things. As a retailer who does have an alarm system, the alarm system is twofold. It's also a fire alarm system, which we're required to have also. And as also, it's an alarm against glass breakage and people entering illegally. It's also a fact, too, that when a police is dispatched for an alarm, it's not usually just one officer. It could be as many as 2 or 3 different cars because of the location of it, because of the size of the facility. The time of day could also cause some of that. At nighttime, nothing ever happens that's very happy. But I do support this. And it also determines insurance rates for businesses. If you don't have the alarms, your insurance rates can be significantly higher. To the Chief's point about restricting people from outside, none of us want to buy a system that comes from somebody that is not reputable. And when we look at systems, this is a business decision that we all make. And I do believe that this is warranted.
Councilor Inman, thank you very much. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Intiman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 40.
Item 40 is a first reading to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, September 11th, 2012 at 7 o'clock p.m. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota providing appropriations and the means of financing for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2013.
Tracy, welcome.
Tracy Turback with the City Finance Office. This is the first reading of the 2013 appropriation ordinance. If you approve the action before you, we'll set this on for second reading and public hearing 1 week from tonight. This action, or this first reading, follows the mayor's presentation of the budget to the council in late July, which was followed by, as you folks know, many presentations to the city council by various city department heads and officials of what's in the budget. And those presentations, of course, were followed by a number of council work sessions. So, and the public had opportunities to attend or view all of those, either on City Link channel on cable TV or streaming online. So the public has had a number of opportunities to learn about what's in the city budget. In addition, city proposed budget is on the city website. Hard copies have been available at all of our branch libraries, as well as the city clerk's office, the mayor's office. And of course, the very next item on your agenda is a public hearing on on the 2013 city budget. So again, the public has another opportunity. So,
Councilor Urbanbach.
Just, Tracy, thank you for the presentation. Would you just, for our Civics 101, remind us the difference between this hearing that we're setting for the appropriation and the public hearing for the budget? Can you just give us that in a couple of...
The hearing that will follow tonight is on the entire comprehensive city budget, and so the slate is wide open for public comment on that city budget. The ordinance itself covers just those what are defined under state law as appropriated funds. So that covers a significant portion of the city budget. All those things that are funded with tax dollars, for example, are covered in the budget ordinance itself, which will be the subject of the public hearing next week.
Good, thank you.
Council, any comments?
I'd like to.
Councilor Jameson.
Yeah, just move to set the hearing date for the 11th.
I'll second.
Very good. Councilor Jameson's made a motion to set a hearing and second reading for Tuesday, September 11th at 7 p.m. for this item, and it was seconded by Councilor Urbanbach. If there is no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entenmann?
Yes.
Urbanbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 42.
Item 42 is a public hearing for public input for a resolution adopting the budget for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2013, and the 2013-2017 capital program.
Tracy, did you have any comments? Very good. First of all, on behalf of the City Council, we certainly want to thank all of you for staying this long. We probably realize that most of you are here for this portion of the meeting. It's a great testament to our people in this town and how much you actually care about what's going on in terms of your government. You do have an opportunity to engage the council. Please come forward. If you'd state your name, we'd appreciate that. If you could keep your commentaries to less than 5 minutes, we'd also appreciate that. Also, just a piece of coaching advice, if you could even provide commentary that hasn't already been relayed, the council likes that. Not that they don't want to hear the same thing over and over again, but they really don't. They would prefer, again, they understand the passion, they understand the dialogue, they understand the commitment. But if there's anything additional that you'd like to add as we go on throughout the night, we'd certainly appreciate that too. But this is your government and it's your opportunity, so we're not going to tell you what you can and cannot do. So please come forward. Welcome, Mr. Townsend.
My name is Bill Townsend. Thank you, Mayor and council members, and I applaud you for the work that you do for the city. At this time, I'm here representing a initiative to build an indoor tennis, a community indoor tennis facility, and I might, in lieu of time tonight, just by show of hands, we have quite a few supporters of the Community Indoor Tennis Center, and if you could just raise your hand if you're here for that. I'm here basically as a spokesperson to say thank you to the Parks and Rec for the partnership that the Sioux Falls Tennis Association and now our initiative to build a community indoor tennis facility in our fine city. So I would ask for the support in the CIP. I'm here to thank for the public and private partnership that we're looking to engage in with the city. And I'd like to just give a quick update on some of the funds. We've been out asking individual tennis members. We've raised over $750,000 to date. We've also approached our Chamber of Commerce and have been approved in April of 2013 for a capital drive that they've approved for us for over $1 million. And so the funds that you would be considering in the CIP would go a long way to bring this as a reality for the city of Sioux Falls. So we feel there's a very strong economic impact for the city of Sioux Falls. We also feel it's a quality of life issue, it's a health issue, and it also supports the kids, our high school, college, and any age that would like to take up tennis. So on behalf of the majority, a lot of the people that are here tonight, I want to say thank you, and I would ask for your support in the dollars that would be going towards the community indoor tennis center.
Ms. Townsend, thank you. On behalf of the people who could not see, why don't the people stand? I think these are the people in the blue buttons, is that right? If you would stand, and then we can let the people of Sioux Falls see us here tonight. Very good. Hopefully the camera caught that. They did. Anybody else? Come on, folks. You've waited a long time. Let's speak on behalf of your cause. Welcome, sir.
My name is Jeff Nelson. I'm the head tennis professional at Westward Oak Country Club, and I've been in the industry for 30 years. Actually proposed to the chamber for an indoor center years ago, and I guess I'm probably a good representative of the industry. At our club itself, we actually had a consultant come in 8 years ago, did a full feasibility study, recommended that we add 4 indoor courts just based on our current participation at the club. We have enough members right now. They say that we should have 1 court for every 50 members. We have 300 people playing on 2 indoor courts. The other club itself has 4 active courts right now. Our consultant 8 years ago had recommended that, or had suggested the city should have 14 indoor courts based on the participation numbers at that time. As the city grows, we continually get behind the 8 ball, and so it's not only probably now is the right time to do it, but it probably should have been years past. And so I encourage the council to consider keeping the money for the tennis center intact. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We can talk about anything. It doesn't have to just be tennis. Mr. Stenga, welcome. Welcome, Tim.
It's amazing how many people will come to a meeting that with their hands out because they want money, but yet any other time you never see them at the meetings. Again, I'm going to state, my daughter was in a cheerleading group. They went out, took $1 million loan, and that facility is making money. No city involvement. I still say that the city should not be involved in things that they shouldn't be involved in. 2, I've always brought up that the city should be involved in trimming trees in the parking areas. I think that we can appropriate some money. If we can appropriate money for a tennis court and swimming pool and whatnot, that I think it's time that the city steps up and appropriates money to trim the trees and the parking. What we do is, and I'm not going to say that we already have money appropriated that we could use, but we have a guy that goes out every year and he holds a stick up in the air and he wiggles it. If it hits a branch, he writes it down, he goes back, and then they send letters out. What does that cost the city, and what would it cost to send 2 other people to go ahead and trim that tree while they're standing there? He drives a car, he's there at the tree. What would it take to send 2 more people to be able to cut that tree down, throw it through the shredder, go to the next one? Very little. Or what we could do is probably have people give us bids to do it. But I just think that since we're here for the citizens of Sioux Falls, and I've heard that several times now, the citizens of Sioux Falls are asking the city to step up, take care of their trees and their parking. And since we're a big city, big cities do that for their people. So I'd appreciate it if you guys would take that in consideration and be able to find the money to be able to take care of your trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Folks, this is your public hearing. Very good. Thank you for coming up. And if there's anybody else, if you could just be ready, we'd certainly appreciate it. Again, don't be afraid. This is a good council. They're not going to hurt you in any way, shape, or form. And the people of Sioux Falls are interested in hearing you speak as well. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Liz Donahue. I'm a Sioux Falls native, and I actually just moved back to Sioux Falls about 2 years ago. As I said, I grew up in Sioux Falls, went to a Gorman High School, and was an active tennis player in juniors, and went on to play Division I tennis at University of Notre Dame. And I'm here as a representative from the Sioux Falls Tennis Association and in support of the Community Indoor Tennis Center. As the junior player, I just want to explain how our section is arranged. We are part of a 4-state section, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and part of Wisconsin. And oftentimes as a junior player, I would have to travel to Minnesota to play in tournaments. This is mainly due to the fact that we didn't have, a lot to do with the fact that we didn't have enough courts to support tournaments here in our city. And I just want to speak to that as far as an indoor facility would do a lot for junior development in the sport, but then also bring a lot to our city. Hosting tournaments here for the junior level, for collegiate athletics, would do a lot for our city. So I just would like to thank you for your time and your consideration in support of this project.
Liz, thank you, and thanks for coming back to Sioux Falls. We appreciate that. Welcome.
Thanks, Mayor. I wasn't afraid of you, but I was afraid of all the women I was with.
Well, that's very good.
Charlie Roberts.
Hi, Charlie.
I'm amazed at all of you. No 7th inning stretch. Mine needed it.
Charlie, there was a request for the 7th inning stretch, and I declined. So go ahead, Charlie.
All right. I just wanted to speak about Spellerberg Park. We have a wonderful park facility over there. One of the gentlemen of the maintenance crew was there, and he showed and told me about the interior of the park, the pool, what it needed. And yeah, the pool itself is shot. But please don't take our green space, and we heard the hospital, and we heard another group, and they all talked about green space, and there, as of right now, there is no real idea as to what the Park and Recreation Department is going to put in this facility. And I kind of just call people. So I called Des Moines and Omaha and St. Paul, and I asked about indoor facilities, and they said yes, but they're all community centers in conjunction with some other big operation, business, corporation, whatever. Rapid City does have an indoor pool. It's 25 yards, as I understand, because that meets the qualifications for a sanctioned meet. I talked to the person who was in charge of their aquatics recreation facility. Again, it's in conjunction with their hockey, their center, their football, much like the complex that is going up north of town. In other words, their swimming and aquatics is right there. It's all together. If they need parking, they can share between each other. The big thing, because we're talking about budget, or you are, and I admire you, yes, that's your job, oh boy. I asked Doug, and I could give you his phone number if anybody should have questions to ask of him. I said, okay, so the real gritty question, do you make any money or do you break even? He said, no. He said, we have $1 million budget for the aquatic pool facility, and we fund $500,000 of it. So in other words, they don't make any money on it. We're not, the people that I kind of represent, we're not opposed to an indoor pool, but we just think Spellerberg, if you would come and walk through the area and look at what might be, or even if we knew what is going to be, we might be able to find some common grounds. But as of right now, no idea what's going to be there. And the idea that of all of the places I called, no one is making any money or even breaking even. Yeah, now it's time for your 7th inning stretch. Thank you.
Charlie, very good job. Thank you. Welcome.
My name's David Honor. I'm a resident of Sioux Falls. I'm here to introduce myself. I'm a board member on the Sioux Falls Aquatic Association. It's a newly formed organization. We have incorporated. We have board members, and we have been meeting with the Park and Rec kind of through this process and stand ready to help with the fundraising in a similar fashion to what some of the other associations have done. One of the differences I think you see between these is it really comes down to, I think, a quality of life and also a health issue. The obesity rate is out of control, and so I just got a few statistics with that. South Dakota, the average obesity rate for an adult is 65%. 65%. Children age 9 to 11, 31%. We have pools that are available for 3 months, and then 9 months they can either try to do some other activity, or if they can't afford that, what do they get? Stay home and play Game Boys or play DS systems and don't move. And so I just wanted to kind of introduce us to the council and to you, Mayor, and say we stand ready to help out with moving forward with this process.
David, thank you, and thank you for your stewardship. We appreciate it. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Jody Fleischacker.
Hi, Jody.
And I was at the pool when it opened. It was my summer of my 10th birthday. I've used the park and the pool. My grandson now goes to the pool with me when he visits, and I love to swim, but the pool was only open 10 weeks this summer. And that's the way it's been for the last 17 years since we moved back into town. The pool is up for reconstruction. Let's make it an indoor pool so we can use it 12 months a year. I know a lot of people who would benefit from this. I know a lot of friends that I have made at the Drake water walking sessions. When that pool closes, they cannot afford to go to a wellness center. They need a place to walk in the water, and this place could provide that. I have a cousin who lost almost 200 pounds. She had to start out in the water. I enjoy it. I have a bad back. Your joints every now and then give out. We can use this. Children, teenagers, swim teams, retired people. This can be an exciting place to meet people, to have activities, to provide a service to our community that isn't found anywhere else in the city. From what I've understood from the plans and from what they've said, it is not going to intrude on the greenness of the park that much. It can enhance the park. It can be usable all year round instead of sitting empty and dead in the water. So I really strongly suggest that we turn this into an indoor pool instead of another pool that is only used maybe 2.5 months out of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Ann Noctegal. I'm a resident here in Sioux Falls, and I'm here to tell you that tennis is alive and well in Sioux Falls and the surrounding community. Our daughter Libby is in the 12 and under tennis group. And to tag off of what Jeff had said, our daughter plays at the only other indoor tennis facility here in town. And on Sundays, they have league, and there are so many kids that they start at 8 in the morning and they play till 8 at night. So just to let you know that there's definitely a huge need in this community. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ann.
Good evening. My name is Paula Gordon, and I moved here 29 years ago. My husband is from Sioux Falls, a lifetime resident. I have raised 3 children here. I grew up in Brookings, which is very municipal. Everything is municipal. I was a charter member of the Brookings Swim Club. I was a jackrabbit swimmer. I swam 4 years in college. When I moved here, I started out going to pools to lap swim. Slowly but surely, each of those pools was turned into a water park. I've taken to running. I'm an avid bike trail runner. I see you quite often on the bike trails. I'm a PE teacher. I'm a swim coach. My whole life has been about trying to keep people, and especially children, active and moving and give them opportunities. My own kids grew up in this town, and they have swum for the last 14 years. They have all left the state of South Dakota to go swim in a brand new pool in a Big Ten college. They've done very well. My hope is that they will want to raise their children here. And if we keep turning swimming pools into water parks, we're losing a lot. We have a lot of kids on the team I currently coach that don't compete, but it's the only place they can come to swim. They can't go to a wellness center. They're 13, 12, 10, 8. Many of them do compete. They enjoy it. We travel a lot. I currently coach most of our team uses Spellerberg in the summer. And I share a love for that park with the people around it. It has been a pleasure to be up there at 7 o'clock every morning and watch that park come to life. And I was happy to see in the park plans that that's not going to change. And I would like to enjoy it all winter long and see the snow. We do not have any place in this town for the public to use during the winter months. As I was sitting here and I heard thunder, I brought up my app so I could check the lightning. Because as a coach, I can't hold practice if there's lightning. And I was reminded that if we had an indoor pool, I wouldn't need that. We do have a great love of swimming in this town, as we share with tennis. And kids love to swim. It's not like any other sport. I don't know why they like it. It's hard. But they keep coming back, and they're coming in droves. And I really hope that my own kids come back to Sioux Falls to raise the third generation of swimmers here, but I don't think they will if we don't have the resources. And I just wanted to also comment, I trimmed my trees last year when the stick guy came by. I paid for that. I paid for the plow guy to come by after they pushed the snow into my driveway, and I'd be happy to see some snow gates. I think that we are a community and we do help each other out. And I'm not a special interest. And I don't think anybody that cares about snow gates is. And I don't think anybody that cares about tree trimming is. I think we're all here together. But the kids can't vote. And I'm here to speak for the kids too, as well as many others. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. And I'll see you on the bike trail. Jerry, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Jerry Noctegal. The better half sits back here. I'll be very brief, my wife Ann. I'm head of public relations for Citibank. I'm not wearing that hat necessarily as I address you tonight. Steve Metley and I have agreed to co-chair the business ask portion of the community indoor tennis drive. I'm not a tennis player. Everybody in my family plays. The dog and I don't. Tennis is a growing sport, a huge demand for it, as you've heard here tonight. I will also put in a pitch for hockey. I sit on the Chamber's Community Appeals Committee, have for 10 years. I can tell you that there was virtually unanimous support among the 20 members of that committee, both for tennis and for hockey. And had a swimming proposal come before us, I'm confident we would have endorsed that one as well, and that day may come on something there. We're a growing city. Money Magazine was out last week with its top cities. Sioux Falls was not in the top 25. I think we should have been. However, I, over the weekend, read the synopsis of all the top 25 cities. The common denominators they had: bountiful recreation opportunities, as well as a strong economy. We definitely have a strong economy. We have good recreational opportunities. Approving these proposals will get to great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry, and thanks for your stewardship as well. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Choate. I'm a resident of Sioux Falls for the last year. I'm also a physician in the community, and I'd like to reiterate some of the previous comments that, this city is wonderful for the recreational opportunities, for the health benefits that its citizens can obtain from those opportunities. And The reason I'm coming to you is because I'm a tennis player. I've loved playing tennis my whole life, and it's really a lifetime sport. It's something that you can learn as a child and play on through adulthood. I've met a lot of players of varying ages over the last year since moving back to Sioux Falls, and moving back to Sioux Falls was wonderful for me because I knew that after spending 15 years of my training on the East Coast, that I'd be able to easily get into playing tennis again because of all the courts that are here. But the one thing we do lack is adequate wintertime court playing, and so that is why I wanted to come and emphasize that there are many lovers of the game in this town, and we'd appreciate your support for wintertime playing.
Welcome home. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and illustrious City Council members. My name is Tam Baker. I do have a tennis badge on because I support any kind of activity. I think it's wonderful. However, swimming to me is even better than tennis because for swimming you don't need any special equipment. You just need a yard or two of material and then you can go swim if you've got the water. So with tennis you need a racket. However, I've been refiguring and refiguring and refiguring this. Something's wrong with my numbers. However, I have to say this. I'm a 49-year resident of the Park Ridge area where Spellerberg is located. And I'm only 35, and I don't understand that. But at any rate, I have lived in that neighborhood. I lived in a duplex on Willow Avenue and moved to a home on Williams Avenue. So that is the area that I call home, and I hope that I can stay there for a good long number of years. I am also a member of the newly formed Aquatic Association. My two daughters learned to swim when they were 2 because I grew up in a farm community and swimming in the water tank for the cows was not really appropriate. We didn't have a tennis court at the park. We had a teeter-totter and a slide. So I'm so grateful to our community and all of this great quality of life that we have. I'm a proponent of indoor swimming because of our climate. It's very cold in the wintertime, and it's very hard to swim outdoors. I do feel fortunate that I am a member of a wellness club here, and part of my exercise routine involves being in the water sometimes. Well, the other day we went to use the water, and the scuba team was there with all of their scuba equipment. Do you have any idea the competition and the need for indoor water for swim teams, for scuba teams, for fire department exercises, and just lap swimming, just bouncing around? Water walking was mentioned, and I know many people who did the water walking this summer are just lost now. They don't know what to do with themselves. I do agree that it is important to get private funds coming into our quality of life places. But when I drive by the soccer fields and I drive by the ball diamonds, did those folks all ante up and raise money and fundraise and all that? I'm not opposed to that, but I'm just thinking those places are covered with snow in the wintertime also. I did read actually that one of our council members is working to let's see, an amendment to use the remaining aquatic facilities development funds to create a long-term master plan for indoor and outdoor pools. And it would go through a committee. I think we have a park board that is charged with such things as that. It makes me think of when I was sitting in one of those chairs and we were working on a new downtown Maine library, and that was promised to us. And somehow that got lost in a committee. And we now have a nicely remodeled old building. So that's why I get worried about committees. Quickly, I will just say that swimming is a lifetime sport. And again, enough has been said about obesity and about the need for exercise. Spellerberg is on a bus route. Spellerberg Park is green. We have lots of green space. I walked around there again today. There was a hawk over there, as a matter of fact. I was just amazed to see a hawk in the city limits like this. But actually, we're going to put a roof over the swimming pool, and we'll still have adequate green space, as far as I can tell. If you need more green space, Sherman Park isn't too far away, and we have Lower Sherman Park. We're so fortunate in our area to have all of this green space. Children, older adults, many people could benefit by an indoor swimming facility. Let's not make it last too long, because I am older than 35 and I would like to live to see this happen in our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tam. Welcome.
My name is Sharon Shantos. I'm a citizen of Sioux Falls, and thank you for listening to our comments tonight. My children are 11, 13, and 15, and we resided in Sioux Falls since 2005. And I came back as well from Sioux Falls, from Denver, Colorado, and I'm pleased to see the city of Sioux Falls growing up. One of the things that I do is I manage contracts for indoor pool space for one of the swim teams in town, and I've managed this for 6 years. And I know the indoor aquatic directors at the YMCA, both YWCA facilities, Augustana, Sanford Wellness, Avera Wellness, the School for the Deaf, and Del Rummel. I've just listed all of the indoor facilities for swimming. Between the times of 3 p.m. and 9 p.m., there are no open lanes. In fact, there are no open lanes for members of those facilities. Even if I used to be a member of the Sanford Wellness Facility, and now the YWCA downtown, and now the YMCA. If I want to swim as a member, I need to do so very early in the morning or wait until a weekend. And even then, most of those times are taken for swimming lessons or other extracurricular activities. But there are no open lanes in town. I've spoke to those aquatic directors, and they too are in support of building another indoor pool. And I guarantee you all of your lanes will be full when you open that facility. In fact, you could build 2 or 3 more indoor pools in the city and they would be full. One of the reasons that there is such a need in Sioux Falls is that South Dakota is one of only 2 states in the nation that does not have sanctioned swimming. I came from Nebraska and Colorado, where high school swimming was very popular, along with football, basketball, and the other popular sports in high school. But we don't have sanctioned school swimming in the state of South Dakota. Therefore, it's really difficult for kids 5 to 18 to get into a pool. And it's even more difficult with a lack of space in the city of Sioux Falls. My kids, and I said they're 11, 13, and 15, have swam since they were 4 years old. In fact, my kids started swimming when they were in Denver, Colorado, and they were in the infant baby classes swimming. When we came to Sioux Falls, my kids continued to swim, but the lanes are so full that they come out of the pool and they're scratched and they're bruised, because when they do lap swimming, there's so many kids in the pool that they're getting hit by the other kids in the lane. We have up to 12 kids in lanes that are only 20 or 25 yards long. And so there's a real safety issue for our kids and even adults who are swimming in the pool, in these indoor pools that I mentioned. We have reached out, and because of this issue, I've reached out to the Sioux Falls Aquatics Association and have agreed to fundraise to raise private funds to match public funds for the indoor pool. And I enthusiastically can say that we have many supporters of this project who are willing to donate monies towards this cause. We've reached out to dozens of organizations, including the Sioux Falls Catholic School District, the other private schools, and as well as the Sioux Falls Public School District. They have written letters of support for this effort, as well as the swim teams, the Scuba Diving Association, the Canoe and Kayak Association, anybody that needs water space for training or practice facilities and then over the winter months. And so with that, I will close and just thank you for your consideration for an indoor pool facility. And specifically, again, Spellerberg has been our home pool for our family for the last 7 years, and we love Spellerberg. My children's father works at the VA. We often go to the Spellerberg pool, and we love the majestic view from Park Ridge and looking at the VA, and in looking at the TSP plans, those views will not be blemished. In fact, I think it's going to add a lot to the park. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
I just wanted to make a few comments here.
Tracy, would you just mind introducing yourself again to the public?
Sorry,
Thank
Tracy
you.
Sabo.
Thanks, Tracy.
You guys all know me. It seems like there's a lot of demand in this community for tennis and swimming based on what I'm hearing tonight. With that much demand, if there really is legitimate demand for this, it really, I would think some entrepreneur or some business person or some charity little organization would decide to open up a business and do it themselves. I don't think it's right to take money from the taxpayers and put them on the hook for as much as half of both of these facilities going on to the future. And you talk about wanting to have more growth. What you could do is you could cut taxes so people can keep their own money, and then they might have money to choose to spend on things like this if they want to. But if they don't want to, they shouldn't be forced to. That's a real big issue with me. You shouldn't be taking money from people that don't want to spend it on something and forcing them to. I think that's wrong in general, but especially with, not everybody wants swimming pools. Not everybody wants tennis courts. I would probably get a subscription to a tennis court or a swimming pool service if there was one in town. But I don't think that it should be funded by the government by whether it's 2% or 90% or 100%. The point is that we should strive to have a voluntary society, not one that's based on coercion. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Welcome.
Mayor Huther and council members, my name is Judy Lampert, and I am one of the Spellerberg neighbors who perhaps doesn't feel that Spellerberg itself is the best place to put an indoor pool. Somebody has said Spellerberg is so small, you will either have a pool or you will have a park, but you cannot have both. And yes, I have been to the meetings. I have copies of the plans. I have walked the park with those plans, and that is true. We will either have a pool or we will have a park, and most of the interior trees will be missing. The interesting part is that I went to Rapid City over the weekend to visit friends, and they said, "What would you like to do while you're here?" And I said, "I hear you have an indoor pool, and I would like to see it." And so we went to the indoor pool. Unfortunately, it was closed for seasonal repairs and cleaning, but we were admitted into the building, and it's a lovely facility. Most of all, it is in an absolutely beautiful, very large park. That and an ice arena, which is right next door, are at one end of this very large park, which adjoins another park. So the total green space on which these two buildings are located is 2 to 3 times the size of Spellerberg Park. It's wonderful. It's a nice setup. These two buildings are at one end of the park, ample parking. The entry into the parking lot is off a side street, so traffic is not being stopped as it would be on Western Avenue to allow cars to go in. And the rest of the park is absolutely beautiful with sports fields, picnic areas, picnic shelters, many activities. I feel that, and I think an indoor pool would be nice, but I feel that if we're to build an indoor pool, and if we put it in Spellerberg Park, we will be getting a second-rate facility. And I think that we need a facility put in an area that will allow us to do our best the first time round.
Judy, thank you very much. Welcome.
Mark, excuse me, Mark Weber, resident of Sioux Falls. It's refreshing to me to hear that there's more than one economist at this meeting tonight. But unfortunately, I don't have an agenda. My comments are mostly related to the budget finance overview process of the, at least I was able to attend 2 of the 3 sessions. 2 of my comments concern the 2013 budget finance overview as presented by the City Director of Finance. It is true that we have a growing tax base and sales tax revenue, but in my view, there might be a few caveats. There may be a little bit of a bump in our economic growth that's currently and maybe in our future. The first penny sales tax graph is presented as a 12-month moving average. Using this method of presentation, the current month's data is added, the figure from a year ago is deleted, and the figure is then averaged. This methodology is going to miss inflection points, won't immediately show changes in the data. For example, the 2013 mayor's budget projects a 5% growth in first penny sales use tax. A moving average in June 2012 was reported to be 5.6%, a 12-month average, whereas the first 6 months of 2012 grew at a rate of 6.6%. I did not hear any discussion in the Finance Department 2013 budget hearing of the impact of the current drought on city revenue. Does the city believe that we're not going to be impacted? Contingency planning should be a function of city government, just reacting after the fact. The Finance Department needs to pay attention not just to the summary data reporting overall monthly changes in sales tax, use tax, but to sales tax information by category. Of the 8 major sales tax categories reported by the South Dakota Department of Revenue, retail trade composes nearly 60% of this local economy. Right now, we're in late summer 2012. Retail trade increased a mere $2 million between June and July of 2012 in Sioux Falls. Historical data from previous years, this is prior to 2008, suggests that this is not normal. The South Dakota Department of Revenue and Regulation report, Municipal Sales Tax Due, shows that Sioux Falls taxable sales grew only 3.3% July 2012 over July 2011. My question to this council, is this the figure at the start of a drought-related trend or some other factor? If one looks at similar, smaller municipalities around Sioux Falls, there are several communities with a negative sales tax report for three consecutive months, May, June, and July of 2012 compared with May, June, and July of 2011. In this immediate area, these communities include Del Rapids, Garrettson, Harrisburg, Hartford, Lennox, Valley Springs. Yes, Sioux Falls has a growing sales tax revenue, but its rate of growth might be dampened in 2013 if this drought continues. Sioux Falls is a regional economy, and we urban people sometimes forget that South Dakota is dependent on the fortunes of agriculture. Does Sioux Falls have a growing property tax base as presented by the Finance Department? The Planning Department ably tracks new construction activity having a future impact on an expanding tax base. A graph was presented by the Finance Department showing a projected 5% property tax growth for 2013. Minnehaha and Lincoln County equalization adjusts assessed values on the basis of home sale prices. One of my long-standing research interests is maintaining a database of local distressed property sales. It shows that in 2011, 10% of homes sold in this community were in this category. Through the first 7 months of 2012, the figure is nearly 8%. The 2011 ratio of distressed property sales price to assessed valuation was 77%. This is a database of 315 properties. The 2012 figure is 80%. That's through July is 157 properties. Distressed property sale information is outside the scope of the Realtor Association of Sioux Empire monthly reporting to the news media. My point is that the volume of mortgage foreclosures is not over in this community. Usually distressed property is a drag on our tax base. I also question a couple of graphs that Human Resources presented during the budget hearings. A graph is shown of the city staffing, which I assume is FTE, which has been relatively flat since 2010. I have asked more than one city council member for an equivalent graph showing temporary part-time city staffing since 2008. Lately, several part-time temporary city employment ads have appeared in the newspaper. If council recalls, one of the new full-time positions requested for 2013 includes replacing 2 part-time employees with a full-time position. What's the level over the years of part-time temporary city employment? Shouldn't a taxpayer know this? We're the ones that pay the bill. The graph of 2012 employees per 10,000 population in comparison to municipalities really compares apples with oranges. Sioux Falls is compared with 10 other cities. If one compares cities similar in population, Sioux Falls basis of census is ranked 152nd. Larger cities in the U.S. on this same graph are Omaha at 43rd, Wichita, Kansas, 49th, Lincoln, Nebraska, 71st.
Mr. Weber, how much longer do you
I
have?
have another minute.
You're at 6:14 right now.
Sioux Falls does not have a jail or a detox function. Response, which is the responsibility of county government. Is it too much to ask that if a comparison of municipal employment between cities is made, at least research the question sufficiently to include cities with similar functions of government?
Thank you, Mr. Weber.
I have one more thing to say. I fully support neighborhood associations with this community development initiative of $10,000. That is, I think that is money well spent.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Folks, anybody else on any topic involving the budget? Well, on behalf of the City Council, it's 10:02. You folks have been here at least till 7 in the spirit of relaying your comments to the City Council. I know they appreciate it. I certainly appreciate it, and I hope the people of Sioux Falls appreciate it as well, and I'm sure they do. Thanks for being here tonight. That will end our public opportunity for comment on the budget, at least tonight. Certainly you have the opportunity to engage your council via email, phone calls, letters, face-to-face meetings, as this discussion will not end just tonight. So with that in mind, I'm going to move to item 43.
Item 43 is a resolution approving a joint cooperative agreement with the Moody County Conservation District.
Thanks, Bob.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Bob Capel with the Public Works Environmental Division. I'd like to introduce some of our team members with me tonight, and that would be Andy Berg with the Public Works Engineering Division. We have Jack Majors, who is the chairman of the Board of Supervisors of Moody County Conservation District, and we have Barry Berg, who is a project coordinator of the Moody County Conservation District. Tonight we bring to you a proposed resolution to allow the city to enter into a joint powers agreement with Moody County Conservation District to solidify our partnerships to improve the water quality of the Big Sioux River. The Moody County Conservation District and the City of Sioux Falls gave a full presentation on this matter at your August 28th City Council informational. Tonight I will do a streamlined presentation to refresh the council and the public on this matter. And if I had known it would have been after 10 o'clock, I would have really streamlined it. I apologize. But I submitted my presentation last Tuesday. First of all, the water quality in the Big Sioux River has improved dramatically over the 40 years that the Clean Water Act was adopted. Although the central Big Sioux River still does not fully meet the designated beneficial uses and has been classified as an impaired water body. The two beneficial uses that it is impaired for is for warm water semi-permanent fish life propagation, and the major pollutant of concern is suspended solids and sediment. The second beneficial use where it is impaired is for immersion recreation, and the major pollutant of concern is E. coli bacteria or fecal coliform bacteria. The state is required to basically develop total maximum daily loads for all pollutants in impaired water bodies within the state of South Dakota. These TMDLs will be used by the US EPA and the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources as a guiding tool to develop new permits and other strategies to help bring the Big Sioux River into compliance with the South Dakota water quality standards. There have been many separate efforts to clean up the Big Sioux River by controlling pollutants from point sources, like regulating cities and industries. Unfortunately, this has not achieved the goals of the Clean Water Act. There has also been many separate efforts to clean up the Big Sioux River by controlling pollutants from non-point sources, example from agricultural. Again, unfortunately, this has not achieved the goals of the Clean Water Act. There has also been separate efforts to clean up the Big Sioux River by controlling pollutants from localized areas, and this again has not achieved the goals of the Clean Water Act. Therefore, it is our opinion that watershed partnerships between point sources, non-point sources, regulatory agencies, and citizens is the best way to improve the water quality in the Big Sioux River to ultimately fully meet the designated beneficial uses. If you recall, the non-point sources discharges are not directly regulated by the United States Environmental Protection Agency or the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources. So most of these water quality efforts are voluntarily implemented by landowners and agricultural producers. Partially funding assistance from federal, state, and local governments has been beneficial in helping non-regulated, non-point source community to implement best management practices to reduce the pollutants that are discharged to the Big Sioux River. One of the major funding sources options available is the use of what is called the State Revolving Fund Loan Program. As you know, as a council, the City of Sioux Falls borrows extensively from the State Revolving Fund to help support our investment into our public infrastructure investments. What I'm going to do here now is kind of the tricky part to explain what's taking place here. I'm going to point to one of the items on the slide there is the non-point source 32. That is one loan that we have taken out in reference to help fund our public infrastructure. In that loan, the City of Sioux Falls borrowed $23,400,000 to help rebuild the major central main sanitary sewer project and other Tier 1 projects within the City of Sioux Falls in the last 2 years. So the loan was taken out. The city has an option to basically take out a conventional SRF loan, or they can take out a separate unique loan that's called a SRF non-point source loan. The difference is the conventional loan has a higher interest rate. The SRF non-point source loan has a lower interest rate. So in this example, the city borrowed $3,400,000, If we would have taken out a conventional loan, the interest rate would have been 2.25%. We would have had an interest payout over a 10-year loan of $2,796,000, with total payments of paying back the loan and interest of $26,196,000. On the other side, we have an opportunity to take out what they call the SRF NPS loan. And this was a very unique thing that federal government and state governments have done, which I think has been a very positive thing to help improving water quality in the United States. Under this situation, our interest rate is lower. It was 1.25%. The interest payout now is only $1,607,000 versus the $2,796,000. The important thing to share here is that little difference, or not a little difference, but the difference of $1,189,400 is between that lower interest and larger interest. If we take out that loan and we make an agreement to the state of South Dakota, they bring that money back to us, and then we can use those funds to help improve the water quality from non-point sources. But the bottom line to the city is, it doesn't matter if we would have taken out the conventional loan or the non-point source loan, the city will pay out the exact same amount of money, and that is $26,196,000. Either way, it's just the difference. Do you want to pay a higher interest rate to the state for the SRF program, or do you want to take a little bit of that money back and share it with our partners in our watershed to improve the water quality of the Big Sioux River? The city has worked in developing a watershed partnership. We started this process back in 2010. So it's been over 2 years we've worked together to try and get a partnership for non-point source and point sources. The Central Big Sioux River Partnership has developed a project implementation plan that has been approved by the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources and also the United States Environmental Protection Agency. The Big Sioux River Partnership has agreed to allow Moody County Conservation District to be the lead project sponsor. We believe this is a prudent decision to use these conservation districts since they have the experience and the relationships with the landowners and producers to get best management practices on the ground to improve water quality in the Big Sioux River from the agricultural community. Next slide shows a map of the watershed area that we are working within. Recently, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources recommended combining the lower Big Sioux River and the central Big Sioux River watersheds into one watershed. We support this because it is in a proper sense, deals with the watershed scale that's appropriate. The watershed, it's kind of hard to show on this map, so I'll kind of explain it. The northern boundary of this watershed is up in Hamlin County, up near Lake Ponset, Esterline area. The west boundary in Minnehaha County is west of Humboldt. In Lake County, it's west of Madison. The east boundary is the South Dakota-Minnesota boundary, and the south boundary all goes down to the Missouri River at Sioux City. Counties within this watershed are Hamlin, Brookings, Lake, Moody, Minnehaha, Lincoln, and Union. There are project sponsors that are part of this project implementation plan. They are listed here, and the total of funding from these project sponsors is $5,128,000. Most of this watershed entails probably the most populated watershed within the state. We also have a steering committee. These are partners that are cooperating in the project, have representation on the steering committee that meets 4 times per year. The steering committee recommends and approves ways to accomplish the goals of our project implementation plan, and this is the list of the steering committee members. We have also developed a stakeholder group to help us along through this process. They provide local feedback to the steering committee. Again, this is a list of the government and private agencies that are involved in the stakeholder groups that we work with. The next slide is basically, here's a brief overview of the project's objectives. And if you recall in the last presentation, we went very detailed in that, and I won't tonight. The BMPs were selected to address the 2 main total maximum daily loads of bacteria and sediment. The master plan will perform computer modeling of the central Big Sioux River and provide a guide to prioritize areas and best management practices that will provide the best bang for the buck improving the water quality of the Big Sioux River. Therefore, the City of Sioux Falls and the Moody County Conservation District would like to enter into a joint powers agreement. The final agreement has been approved and signed by Moody County Conservation District, and we would appreciate your consideration and support of this resolution to enter into this agreement to improve the water quality of the Big Sioux River. And our team is open for any questions at this time.
Bob, thank you. Very good. Is there anyone in the audience who wanted to speak to this item before I went to the council? Council, any questions? Yes, Councilor Enman.
Bob, you mentioned at the informational, you told us where the water quality breaking point was, what was acceptable and what isn't acceptable. Can you give that to us again, please?
Sure, and that's one thing that's a little deceiving. I'll go back to the map here of the watershed, and it's really difficult to see, but the state of South Dakota develops different designated use for different parts of the stream. As you can see, there's a red line. That's the red line that shows the water body is impaired. And that's mainly because of immersion recreation. That's most of it. And the immersion recreation goes from Missouri River up to close to the Moody County border with Minnehaha County. After that, as it goes north, the state of South Dakota has determined that portion of the water body is not appropriate for immersion recreation. So now all of a sudden the standards become less stringent. It's not that the water quality is really much better north of there, it's just that the standard is not as restrictive. That's why you see the big shift from the blue north saying it's not impaired to red saying it's impaired is mainly because of the standard has changed.
And you would suggest then that it's from a combination of a number of different things, whether it's agricultural runoff, whether it's from pollution, industrial pollution, any of those kinds of things. It's a combination of all of these that cause an immersion recreation. Basically, you're talking swimming sports or water sports of
correctly, yeah,
something.
The state calls it immersion recreation. It's swimming, okay. And you are correct. The pollutant sources are from anywhere in the watershed. As we explained, we are a significant source of bacteria in the watershed because of our stormwater discharges to the Big Sioux River. But there's also major pollutant discharges from the ag community also. And as I said before, it is really all of our problem, and it's going to take all of us to solve this problem.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. Team, would anybody want to make a motion? Councilor Jamieson.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Councilor
Second,
Jamieson.
Entman.
Thank you, Councilor Entman. There's been a motion and a second on this item. If there's no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 7-0. Item 44.
Item 44 is a resolution advising and giving consent to the appointment of members to certain citizen boards.
Would you just please read those for the people?
Sure. D. Scott Bartlett, Board of Health. Mary Greenlee, Board of Health, Falls Community Health Center Board. Sandra Hoagland Hansen, Civil Service Board. Mark Reichelt, Commission on Human Relations. Samuel Gayate, Falls Community Health Center Board.
Council, any questions or comments? Anybody want to make a motion?
Move to approve, Erpenbach.
Second, Karski.
Councilor Box made a motion, seconded by Councilor Karski. Any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entman?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 7-0. Item 45.
Item 45 is a resolution adopting the concerted Whittier Heights Neighborhood Redevelopment Revitalization Plan.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Adam Roach with the Community Development Department.
Hi, Adam.
I will be presenting items 45, 46, and 47 in conjunction as the project relates to the TIP 16. If I have your blessing.
Councilor Erpenbach?
Would it be appropriate for the clerk to read all three of them then?
Probably be a great idea. Thank you, Councilor Erpenbach.
Item 46 is a resolution creating tax incremental district number 16, City of Sioux Falls. Item 47 is a resolution approving the project plan for tax incremental district number 16, City of Sioux Falls.
Thank you. Adam?
Thank you. TIP 16 and the Whittier Heights Concerted Plan provide an opportunity to mitigate a blighted and underutilized underutilized 30-acre parcel in the core of our community. The subject property is located off north of East 1st Street, east of North Cliff Avenue, and just west of the Leaders Addition. The site has been vacant for over 75 years, as you see in the aerial photograph from 1937 up till 2012 for over 75 years. Growth has basically encompassed this entire site. The city has been approached in the past about developing the property, but developers have been unsuccessful in bringing the project to fruition due to challenging site constraints and feasibility. Constraints that inhibit feasibility are challenging topography. It varies from about 60 feet in some areas to others. The site requires extensive dirt work because it needs removal of a railroad berm for connectivity on the south end of the property, and it would connect to at least 2 streets on the south end there, whichever are most feasible and conducive to the neighborhood. Noise mitigation from an active railway on the north end of the property, and identified exposed bedrock from a geotech study in 2008 on the west end of the property. Again, the site is very underutilized, and there is a criminal element that partakes in this area back here. It's inaccessible by vehicle traffic. I did get a report from Officer Peterson of phone calls within the vicinity here, and they extended from illicit drug use, homicide, illegal dumping, homeless camps, intoxicated subjects, and suspicious activity. Proposed construction of the TIF 16 plan is approximately 83 and 4-bedroom homes, single-family affordable homes to be constructed. The homes will feature a double garage and all the amenities that you would associate with the new development. The project is anticipated to break ground early 2013 with a completion date of fall of 25. Staff have identified 2 economic development tools that we can feel that can make this site work. The first is the concerted plan. The Whittier Heights Concerted Redevelopment Plan is an economic development tool defined by the state as a locally approved revitalization plan targeting a specific area of the community for housing and economic development. According to the state, the plan must identify a specific type of residential development to occur that eliminates blight or underutilization of the subject area, as this 30-acre site has been for many, many years. So what's unique about this plan? The plan is unique that it lays out specific planning guidelines for the development that exceed minimum standards of the RS2 zoning district. These include the average lot size, a differentiated housing design that includes 5 different designs, brick veneer, and also shutters. Development would consist of 1 acre of green space and connectivity for pedestrian and vehicular connectivity. The proposed development provides a great opportunity for affordable housing. The 2010 housing indicates that the segment of the rental market where pent-up demand currently exists is within the rental affordable housing inventory. Many older subsidized projects are currently being converted back to conventional projects, and therefore we are losing those affordable housing options. And with the influx of population within the city of Sioux Falls, we need to continually provide affordable housing for our workforce. Opportunities of the development: it has the potential to revitalize adjacent core neighborhoods by cleaning up a blighted and difficult to develop area. Hopefully that will continue to move to adjacent neighborhoods with the gentrification aspect of the copycat effect. It provides much needed 3 and 4 bedroom affordable housing stock that is single family. It's clean, safe, and affordable. Its proximity to major employment hubs. It does currently sit on 2 transit lines, making this 30-acre parcel of land ideal for residential living. The property would be rezoned. It's currently zoned industrial, and a rezone to RS2 would be more conducive with the environment. The second economic development tool being sought after is tax increment financing. The developer is requesting $1.85 million in tax increment, eligible of 2.045 for a term of 15 years to relieve costs associated with extraordinary site constraints. This includes, again, extensive grading, mitigation from noise from the active railway to the north, removal of debris that was once stored on the land, aggregate, concrete, et cetera, was stored by Henry Carlson Company on the land. Former railroad right-of-way will need to be removed, and mind you, this berm is about 25 feet high that runs all the way along the south side of the development and the court site that has been identified on the west end of the property. No TIF dollars will be utilized for the construction of homes, as it is not allowed under state statute. The current land value is $258,000 with an annual tax revenue generation of $9,000. An estimated assessed value after the proposed 80 single-family housing project is developed is approximately $168,000. And the projected 15-year cumulative is approximately $2.5 million of that project. Again, this just breaks down the development challenges and what's been identified for costs, and then additional site costs that the developer has identified through infrastructure design and conditions, and they're asking for a total of $1.85. And the goals of utilizing the TIF, and just two things to keep in mind, is the blight removal, achieving the goal of developing 30 acres of underutilized land in the core of our community, or support affordable housing, blight removal, redevelop an underutilized parcel that's been vacant for, again, 75 years, and supporting the affordable housing development. The plan does adhere to the 2035 Shape Sioux Falls that was approved and adopted by the City Council and had a lot of input from citizens, and we've identified quite a few measures that adhere to the plan. The utilization of economic development tools for neighborhood conservation, ensuring safe, clean, and affordable housing options, focusing efforts on revitalizing the core of our city, location of development in proximity to major employment hubs, and the rezoning of outdated land uses to those that are more compatible and more conducive to the neighborhoods. And I will answer any questions that you may have, and we also have Mr. Todd Meyer Henry and Mr. Dunham here to answer questions for you as well.
Adam, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wanted to speak to this before I go to the council? Mr. Dunham, did you want to speak? Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just have a couple of comments I would like to make, and I want to thank the staff for working on this as long as they have, and I want to thank Mike Cooper for bringing it to us a year and a half ago. We probably would have said no had we realized all the work this would have turned out to be. But I do want to point out the one thing about the affordable housing part of this. About 15 years ago, we got homestead trails approved by this same council, and we are now we can sell them after 15 years. And we have sold 31 of those 32 homes in homestead trails, and we turned those into from a leasing issue with a subsidized rate for 15 years into ownership for these people, and they could have never bought that home. But in those, we only could spend $73,000 15 years ago to build these homes. They were all 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, double garage, and so forth. But now we're required to put in 2 baths and 3 bedrooms, or 2 baths and 4 bedrooms, and we have to upgrade several issues on it. But I just wanted to point out that the Homestead Trails project is proof it can work. That's my only point, because it's the only project in South Dakota was built and actually has made it all the way through the exit strategy. And Todd, I don't know if you have any comments, but
Mr. Meyer, welcome. Todd, any comments?
Todd Meyer Henry, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Just to give you a quick review where the city is, how these TIF projects come to the city. Basically, someone who has a project that needs incentive comes to community development, they look at it, they make the first pass at it to determine whether it's feasible, whether it's a project that the city wants to look at. After they determine that, we sit down with the developer, the city looks through and develops a project plan, and then before anything else occurs, they go to the other taxing districts, the school district, the county, and the watershed district, and present it to them to see if they have any concerns before it even gets in the process. Then the public has 2 shots at comment. First of all, notice is published in the paper that there's going to be a planning hearing to determine whether the Planning Commission would recommend the creation of a TIF and recommend a planning or recommend the tax increment plan. And then there's a second hearing, this hearing tonight, which is brought to the governing body, and within their discretion, whether they create the TIF, approve the plan, and proceed with the project. And that's where we are today. And I think the best stage, since we've been here a long time, is to just allow questions and we'll answer them.
Thanks, Todd. Thank you. And Mr. Dunham, thank you as well. And Adam, of course, thank you. Council, any questions? Yes, Councilor Edelman.
Question. It's my understanding, but according to your presentation then, the TIF that's proposed, or the funds thereof, are for the mitigation of the land, not for the construction of the homes.
That's correct, sir. Under state statute, it's not allowed to for any stick building of the homes.
Could you put up the picture, the historical picture of that parcel of land, please, at the beginning of the presentation?
That was the oldest aerial that we could find.
Okay. I did have a little bit of angst with this at the very beginning, dealing with being a housing development per se. But I guess historically, and that was a question that I had on this, Darren, and I know Darren had addressed this too, that historically that he would, or that the department does consider this to be blighted land as a result of the development needs of the mitigation of the property and everything around there.
That's correct. Because of the underutilization aspect under state statute, it falls under the blighted category.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Question on this. When it talks about the affordable housing component and River Tower, how does River Tower fold into this?
River Tower comes into play because that's one of the housing developments that is turning back to conventional. I think it was a 30-year term that it had to be affordable. And so we're seeing more projects like that that are going back to conventional, and we are losing some of our affordable housing stock.
Okay, so this is just an example. River Tower has nothing to do with
correct
the revitalization plan or the Whittier neighborhood, correct?
Correct, Councilor.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Edelman.
One more question I had concerning the land. A couple of questions that I'd heard from people were, I think, Don, you'd mentioned that this is about a $150,000 house. How is that what they consider affordable housing today? I mean, you mentioned 25, however many years ago, it was closer to the 80,000.
That's correct.
Mr. Dunham, would you mind coming forward, please, just so that folks can hear you?
Yeah, we don't set the criteria for what the house should cost or what it should be. The federal government sets that, because if we get your approval tonight, then we have to go to South Dakota Housing Authority and the tax credit people. We've already got our commitment from the tax credit people, but we're asking for bonds from South Dakota Housing Authority as well, and we've already got a verbal commitment from them. But and I'll run through real quickly. The 3-bedroom, 2-bath, double car garage, full basement, it has to, we cannot spend more than $148,000, and it cannot rent for first year more than $679. The 4-bedroom, 2-bath is, we can't spend more than $162,000, and we can't, and we can't lease it for, it's just a little bit over $1,000. And they're like 75 or 80% 3 bedrooms, and then there's a component of 4, but those are set by the government, not us.
Good, thanks.
Mr. Dunham, thank you.
You bet.
Councilor Anderson, Jr.
I guess I'm wondering about access from the south, from the actual Whittier area. What streets are going to access into that property?
That's been undetermined yet because of engineering constraints. Once an engineer does go out to the site, they will determine what are the most feasible ones. It's been identified that streets that are, the next street that's right next to Cliff won't be an access point because it's so close to an arterial. But we have it written in the concerted plan that there will be access to 2 streets to the south. And then also to Tricia Lane on the west of, or the east of the development.
East there?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Mr. Dunham, a comment on that?
Yes, I would like to. We had a neighborhood meeting, and we only had a dozen neighbors show up. But all the neighbors that are on Tricia Lane, I think, is that Tricia Lane? Is that what that's called? But they were all for it, and all the neighbors on the south part of it were for it. And it was interesting because, you know, obviously I said, why are you all in such, that's why they're not here tonight, I'm sure. But they said it's because of the crime. They just want to eliminate the crime out there, and that's why they're so much for it.
Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Just a comment. I've spoken to business people and the neighbors over in that area also, and extensively. And I agree with you, Mr. Dunham, that they are very excited to see this property be developed and think that it will be a good energizing factor for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Councilor Anderson, Jr., with that in mind, and I know the work you've done, would you be willing to make a motion on this item?
Move to approve.
Second, Karski.
It's been a motion by Councilor Anderson, Jr., seconded by Councilor Karski on item number 45. If there's no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That has passed 7-0. Item 46, we'll just reread it.
Do you want me to reread it?
Would you mind?
Sure. A resolution creating tax incremental district number 16, City of Sioux Falls.
And
Move to approve, Erpenbach.
thank you, Councilor
Second,
Bach.
Entenmann.
Thank you, Councilor Entenmann. It's been a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Item 46, if there's no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That has passed 7-0. Item 47.
Item 47 is a resolution approving the project plan for tax incremental district number 16, City of Sioux Falls.
Move approval, Aguilar.
Second, Anderson.
Councilor Aguilar has made a motion to approve, seconded by Councilor Anderson, Jr. If there's no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Aguilar?
Yes.
Anderson? Entenmann?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 7-0. Item 48.
Item 48 is a report of the August 28, 2012 Notice of Transfers of Appropriations within Major Organizational Units.
Very good. We don't have to do anything with that. Okay, very good.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Bach.
move to adjourn.
Thank you,
Second,
Councilor Bach.
Anderson.
There has been a motion to adjourn this meeting, seconded by Councilor Anderson, Jr. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It has passed. This meeting is adjourned. Sioux Falls, it's 10:36. Your city council has been here no later than 4 o'clock this afternoon, and it's now 10:30. They're working their tails off for you. Make it a great, great night, Sioux Falls.
Ordinance that